Good evening, everybody. January 9th, 2025 at 5 p.m. Select Board's call to order. We're going to go into executive session. Excuse me, MRSA 1405-6E to consult with town attorney regarding pending and contemplated litigation. All in favor?
We gotta have a motion in a second.
Got a motion, yeah.
I'd move we enter executive session.
Second.
First and second, all in favor? Yep. We'll be back.
This is a mic test for YouTube and Town Hall streams.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be coming out of executive session. I need a motion.
So moved to come out of executive session?
I have a first and a second. All in favor? There was no action taken. David, you have something you want?
Yeah, thank you, Alan. Before we did the Pledge of Allegiance, I thought that today is a National Day of Mourning for former President Jimmy Carter, who died on December 29th at the age of 100. He was our 39th president, and I thought it was appropriate for the board and the town to take a moment to honor him for his service, for all that he had done over that time. He was a son, he was a father, he was a brother. He was husband to Rosalind for 77 years. He was a grandfather to 12, great-grandfather to 13. He was a man of deep faith who lived out the call of the great commandment to love God and to love his neighbor. His work at the presidency is well known, but especially his work with Habitat for Humanity after that. And I think, which we here in Kennebunkport are lucky to have a couple residents who are homeowners and are people that we serve. He was a son, because of the work that he kind of did with Habitat for Humanity. His husband to Rosalind for 7 His grandson Jason today at the funeral recalled Jimmy and Rosalind, and he said, and I thought it was appropriate, for everything that those two accomplished in their life, who lived out the call of the great commandment, always remembered that they were small-town folks who never forgot where they were from. The presidency is well known, but especially his work with Habitat for Humanity after that. On this day of mourning, and I think, which we here in Kennebunkport are lucky to have a couple residents who are homeowners and are people that we serve because of the work that he kind of did with Habitat for Humanity. His grandson Jason today at the funeral recalled Jimmy and Rosalind, and he said, and I thought it was appropriate, for everything that those two accomplished in their life, that they always remembered that they were small-town folks who never forgot where they were from or who they were. And I think that that is appropriate. I think on this day of mourning that we should take a moment to remember Jimmy Carter.
Thank you. Okay, item 4, approve December 26, 2024 Select Board meeting minutes. I have a first and a second. All in favor? Public forum. This is an opportunity for anyone who wants to address the Select Board with any issue that is not on the agenda.
Good evening, I'm Ray St. Lawrence, 16 Hillside Drive, and just a simple request, I'd like to get my trash and recycling picked up. I spoke to the supervisor that does the route at Goose Rocks Beach, and she informed me, she pulled up the same map that I have, that Hillside Drive was extended about 5 years ago and has a cul-de-sac at the end. And they said I had to go to the town to get approval to have my trash and recycling picked up. So that's basically it.
So you don't, right now you don't have any trash or your recycling, or just a recycling?
We have to take it down. Could I bring this map up? Maybe that would help.
No, we understand.
Okay, so anyway, right now, I have to bring it down to the corner of Benson Ave and Hillside Drive. And when I spoke to the people that drove the truck, they said, well, we don't go up there, but they didn't know that the road had been extended. I had to go to the town to get approval.
Is that a turnaround, or is that a?
No, it's a cul-de-sac, and there's 2 houses at the end and myself and one before me. And all the construction vehicles over the past 2 or 3 years have used that turnaround, cement trucks. So anyway, right now, we get our gas and oil delivered. I have to bring it down to the corner. So it is viable to have the trash truck come up there. And she also said they don't use the larger trucks for the Goose Rocks route. We don't go up there, because of some of the tight turns, like coming off of Sandpoint Road and such. No, it's a cul-de-sac, and there's 2 houses
So what I
at
would
the end, and
suggest is
myself
Eric
and
LaBelle's our
one
Public
before
Works
me.
Director, and he could go in the
all the
hallway with
construction
you and get your
vehicles over the
number
past
and
2 or 3
information,
years
and then he
have
can
used that
talk to
turnaround.
Casella and get back to you.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We get our gas and oil delivered.
Anybody else have?
So it is viable
What
to
about
have the
any
trash
hands
truck
up?
come up there. And she also said they don't use
No
the
hands
larger
raised,
trucks
okay.
for the Goose Rocks route.
6,
Because of some of the
legislative
tight turns.
sentiment
like
presented
coming
by
off of,
Representative
Sandpoint
Tracy
Road
Gear and
such.
Senator Joseph Rafferty.
So what I
you
would
have a
suggest
presentation
is
to make?
Eric LaBelle's our Public Works Director. And he could go in the hallway
Yep,
with you
come
and
right-
get
come
your
right up.
number and
Okay.
information, and then he can talk to Casella and get back.
Good evening,
That'd
everyone.
be great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Senator Rafferty is on his way up here.
Anybody else have? No? What
Uh,
about any hands?
I'm happy to be here today in my capacity as representative for Kennebunkport and Coastal Biddeford and
6,
Kennebunk in the
legislative
main house,
sentiment
and
presented
Senator
by
Rafferty here is here as
Representative
well.
Tracy Geer,
And for
Senator
those of you who
Joseph
aren't
Brown.
aware, Maine's legislature
do
does
you have a
something
presentation
called
to make?
legislative sentiments, which are a way that the whole legislature
come right up.
expresses something to the people of Maine. And so I wanted
evening,
to
everyone.
be here tonight with the
Senator
passing of
Rafferty
David
is
James.
on his way up here.
For me, there are people in the world who I
I'm
like to
happy to
refer
be
to
here
as
today in my
glue people.
capacity as
And they're the people that hold
representative for,
together
Kennebunkport
their
and
families,
Coastal
their
Biddeford and
community
Kennebunk
in some
the
way.
main
And
house,
it's not always
and,
the same
Senator
way.
Rafferty
It's
is here
often
as well.
different and depending
And
on the
for those of
person.
you who aren't aware,
And for me, when
Maine's
I moved
legislature
here
does, something called
almost
legislative
18 years ago
sentiments,
to
which are a
Kennebunkport,
way that the
one of
whole
the first things
legislature,
that folks told me
expresses
about
something,
was
to
if
the
you wanted to
people
be
of
in the
Maine.
know about what's
And,
happening
so
in
I
the town of
wanted to be
Kennebunkport,
here
you need to
tonight, with the
talk to
passing
David
of David
James and get
James.
on the mailing list for the
For me,
Kennebunkport
there are
Residents
people in the
Association.
world
And
who I like to
for
refer
me,
to
that
as
was really
glue
just
people.
an example
people
of
that
the
hold
amazing
together
dedication
their
to
families,
community
their
of someone.
community in some
And so,
way. And
to
it's
me,
not
David
always the same
James
way. It's
exemplified
often,
that in so many
different and
ways.
depending on the
And so,
person.
if I might,
And
I
for
was,
me, when I
moved here almost 18 years ago to Kennebunkport. One
Thank
of
you
the
very much, and I appreciate Representative Geer inviting me to join her in terms of this recognition. But, so I want to say thank you, and it is true. You know, the more I do this work, this is my third term sitting in the state Senate, the more I do it, the more I appreciate things that you folks are doing, because it just takes an awful lot for people to step forward in today's world. There's not a lot of people willing to do it, but and thinking of being behind the scenes and keeping people involved, though, I think is very important. And I know David did a tremendous job in that area. So I am just grateful to be with you, but thankful very much of the work you folks are doing and David's family.
Thank you.
And if I might, I was just going to read the sentiment out loud into the record. State of Maine, in memoriam, whereas the 131st Legislature has learned with deep regret of the death of David James of Kennebunkport. Mr. James, who had a career as a chemical engineer, was very active in his community. He was executive director of the Kennebunkport Residents Association and editor of the association's newsletter. He was also a trustee of the Kennebunkport Conservation Trust and a member of the Buildings and Grounds Committee of the Louis T. Graves Memorial Public Library. He served 19 years on the town's budget board and 15 years on the county's budget board. In 2019, he received a Spirit of America Foundation Tribute Award. Mr. James will be long remembered and missed by his family, friends, and community. Therefore, be it resolved that we, the members of the Senate and the House of Representatives, pause in a moment of understanding and prayer to inscribe this token of sympathy and condolence to all who share this great loss, and respectfully request that when the legislature adjourns this date, it do so in honor and lasting tribute to the deceased. And there will be a moment in one of our legislative sessions where we will be honoring David James as we adjourn. And with that, I would like to have Lisanne and hopefully other members of the family come up to receive the sentiment. So thanks, and thanks so much for your dad.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words.
Thank you very much. Thank you, folks. Thank you. And thanks for sharing.
Can we just get a picture with everybody right there? Maybe in front of the podium, because.
Do you want to open it?
Open it up.
Open it. Open it.
Did you guys want to say anything? Jenny, you have a 3-page report, probably.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, excuse me. 7, capital improvement presentation.
Yes. Can you have Nicole
7?
at the other end?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we doing 7?
Six went to seven.
Six was,
Yeah, we'll
six
settle.
was Tracy.
7, mine says climate resiliency.
No?
Oh, yeah, so they changed it.
What's yours say?
Mine says climate resiliency, but we're gonna do capital now. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, so does mine.
Just saying what it says, yeah.
But the one you sent us was 9.
Mine says capital.
That's the wrong one.
It's the wrong one. You'll put it
Mine says 9's climate resiliency.
Perfect.
What does yours say?
I was looking at that.
Oh.
I don't know if I got that. Did I get?
I can fix it.
Climate
So, good
resilience.
evening, everyone. If anybody wants a copy, we do have some extra hard copies over there. Tonight is our capital improvement plan presentation. We do this every year as part of our annual budget process. It's the first step in the process. And the reason why we do a 5-year and beyond capital plan is so that we all have a broader view of what's coming, what kind of the assets and needs of our community are, and to make sure we're planning. And also, it's important for staff to get feedback from the board, because the reason we do this at the beginning of the budget process is so that we can incorporate those priorities within the next fiscal year 26 budget. So I also want to say that this year I've done things a little different. We have categorized things by the type rather than by department. So I'm going to give you an overview of everything rather quickly. But there are some specific items that are new or different that we're going to call up department directors to talk about. They're all here. They're ready to answer any questions. So if any of you want to stop at any point and get clarification, they're all here. Okay? Dave? So we talk a little bit about what a capital improvement plan is. And as we've said, this is a financial plan. And it helps promote coordination of our efforts and guides our debt financing and the budget process. So this is a plan. I want to make that absolutely clear to everyone. A plan is not the budget. The plan informs the budget. But just because the capital improvement plan is a document which we adopt does not mean that you have authorized everything in it. As I've talked about, the departments on an annual basis go through and submit everything to Nicole, and she works with them, and we meet with them to talk about what those capital needs are. So we try to gather everything possible we can. And I also want to say that some of these costs in this are guesses. Okay, if it's probably beyond FY26, it's our best guess. And so sometimes we need to do additional design work or get costs, or costs are going to increase or change over this 5-year period. So we have done the best we can to give you an idea. Also to note, these are not all operating funds. Meaning coming from tax dollars. So some of them are funded through the operating budget, some are through reserve funds, some are debt, some are through trust funds, and also we go through grants. The important thing in the capital plan is it has to exceed the useful life of 2 years, and it has to cost more than $10,000. So here is the 5-year plan. You can see FY26 through 30. We have $43 million across these departments. And this just shows you on a department basis. Special projects is where our resiliency is. You can imagine wastewater has all the capital needs for pump stations and lines. Public Works, a large part of that is certainly our road investment. You know, we invest close to $1 million in roads a year, but it also includes a $4 million potential building expansion, and then administration is large this year because of the town hall project. So this is also by type. So looking at that same information differently, you can see that over half is infrastructure. And again, that infrastructure mostly is our roads, it is our wastewater, and it is those resiliency projects. The next biggest is building and facilities, and we'll delve into that a little more. And then, of course, our equipment is the next biggest. If we look at funding source, so where is the money coming from, you can see that half of this is by bond. And so bond, we would never suggest that we take out a bond unless it is capital that is going to last the life of that bond. So usually, at least that would be 10 years and more often 20 years when we're talking about wastewater or buildings. We have some set aside for reserves. We are looking for grant money. A lot of that would be tied to our resiliency projects. But over that 5-year time period, we're talking about $11.5 million coming from the operating budget. So if we look at next year in specifically, we are looking by department again, and you can see administration is the town hall project, along with some other things. And then special projects is looking at the next resiliency project. Again, looking at next year, you can see building and facilities, there's that town hall again, and then infrastructure is again that resiliency project. And then if we look at funding source, you're looking at that bond being for town hall. Grant would be for the resiliency project. We're looking at some reserves and then operating budget. So 2.8 would be operating budget. I doubt I will be coming to you with a budget that has 2.8 in it. And so that means we have to reduce that by the time we come to you in March. And so that's where those priorities again are important to set. So this year I wanted to look at it in type. And so we are looking at all the potential building projects we see. So in FY26, we have the town hall project, we have public works building renovations, and public health has joined the capital plan, and they are looking at a ramp replacement. FY27, we're looking at the addition to the village fire station. We have a cold storage facility that needs updating. We're looking at the police flooring in PD. And then we go out to FY30 with a public works facility upgrade. And then in the future, we are looking at, we see sometime in the future that probably the public health department will have to move so that the police can expand into that space. They're using a lot of basement space currently for evidence and IT, and those demands continue to increase in how we keep those, and so that will probably happen in the future. The other thing we see is wastewater plant upgrades will be necessary. $8 million is a placeholder. A lot of that has to do with coming regulation that isn't on the plate right now, but we foresee coming. So here's the town hall project, 7.5. You're all familiar with this. We continue to work on that. Next. Here is the town hall / village fire station. So in blue is the fire station addition. And the green would be town hall. This was one proposal we discussed in terms of connecting the town hall and fire station addition so that we could use those spaces and get more use out of them. As we talked about, we really need to prepare for per diem and full-time firefighters. So it would be adding a bay for our equipment, adding some safety space, and then adding rooms for bunks and offices. And this would also house ambulance as well as firefighters. Here's some of the reasoning for the renovations. So we talked before about what life was like in 2001 when this building was constructed and what it is like now. And the volunteers continue to decrease, and really that availability, as Chief Everett talks about every year on that Monday through Friday daytime schedule, is very challenging, and that's probably where we would start with our per diem force. Highway garage renovations, you probably remember that the budget discussions last year revolved around what we can do at the highway garage. And that led us to put some money aside to do some analysis of our future needs. So what we have decided is we would like to address the employee needs within the lounge and the restrooms. This is the nicest I've ever seen these spaces. When, when I asked for pictures, they cleaned everything up before they took them. And I was like, wow. So, but you do get that in the restroom facilities. That's all our water filtration equipment down there. There is no sink in the restrooms. There's no shower upstairs in the meeting room, employee lounge. It is compact and tight, and there is no sink up there. There is one sink that is in the mechanics bay, and it's used for everything under the sun. So the renovations would allow us to put a sink for the restroom, a sink upstairs for the kitchen area, expand the kitchen area a little, and also put a shower in, which makes all kinds of sense for the kind of work that they do. Here is the ramp to the public health office. It is aging and rotting. We have been doing repairs for a number of years to it here and there, but we really need to replace that. Here's our cold storage facility on the left. So it is a metal arch building. If you go up there and look inside, you'll see a lot of leakage water sitting on the floor. It has a concrete foundation, but the metal has rusted away. We have had our insurance company up there, and they've told us that they see a limited life cycle. I learned today that the insurance company is coming back again to look at it next week. And so I was hoping we could at least get another year out of it. But what we are proposing is we'd still use the same foundation. And Eric got pricing on putting a new dome over it. And this would be the most cost-effective way so that we could continue to use it for storage. Because certainly our equipment being in the salt shed doesn't make sense, and having it outside certainly shortens the lifespan. Here's some pictures that the police building flooring, except for in the addition in the public health office and in the police, is original to the building, and it has seen better days. The building improvements at Public Works facility for the future. I've shown you a picture of basically what we have up there. You know, the needs for equipment storage have changed over time, as well as what kind of activities. We don't have a wash bay area for our equipment, and so really looking at that space and how it's best going to serve us, as well as, you know, how many public works employees do we need to do the work in the future, needs to be examined. So we do have funding that we're going to continue to look at that, but we see that on the horizon. And we talked a little bit about the public health relocation. And so here is a diagram of what the public health office looks like. This was another one where Allison cleaned up before she took the pictures. And as she said to me, the treatment room is always that clean. But we do have a small area where our nurses all share. The closet where we keep our medical equipment is usually spilling over. We're very fortunate to have a lot of donations and a lot of people use it, but we didn't really build that area for that storage. A lot of the storage is down in the basement underneath the police building, and you know, it's not really a climate-controlled area. But this is something that we probably need a better setup for in the future. So let's look at our infrastructure projects, and we're going to start with Parks and Rec. So as you can see, for Parks and Rec, it's really about creating park spaces. We did the Parks Master Plan last year, and this is really about bringing that to fruition. Do you want to go forward? So one of the things that's hot on the list is to replace this fence that goes around Parsons Field. We're looking at park improvements at Firefighters Park, so adding a walking path so that Cape Porpoise residents have a place to go that walk that's safe and out of the way. Certainly having, we've been asked by a lot of families in Cape Porpoise to have a better playground system down there. We'd like to see that it has a theme related to Firefighters Park. Next, we have Parsons Field, looking at a parking addition. One of the issues with the rec building is that it has very limited parking, and when we have field events or large events, we're dependent on the consolidated school parking area, and as you can see, people park along the lawn area, especially for softball. And so finding some additional parking would be important in the future. And then lastly, at Firefighters Park, one of the ideas was to have an overlook, perhaps a kayak launch area, and so that would be something for the future. So keeping with Public Works, you can see the majority of these are for road. So roads and sidewalks, continuing to invest in that. I would say the one thing that is different there is the traffic calming, and I'm going to ask Eric to come up and talk a little bit about that. Next slide. Oh, these are just all the roads that we're planning for the next 4 years. This is our current plan.
Yes, so the demonstration plan is what we've called it to date. So this is really the kind of the first step, if you will, for what was asked of us. So we approached DOT, we talked about what could be done here, what would they allow us to do on a state route. And a demonstration project is what they've come up with. So what they would like us to do is evaluate the road before making any temporary improvements, and evaluate the road once the improvements are in place. And this would involve placing a traffic island of sorts. If you can see here, if you're approaching from the Biddeford city line, you would be approaching, heading towards Cape Porpoise. You would have a turn pocket that would turn onto the Dyke Road. We would also install a pedestrian refuge. Of course, a pedestrian refuge is across the Dyke Road, which we would maintain that, of course, regardless of the outcome of the project, and see how that would perform. So we would evaluate speed before the project and after the project with these delineators, if you will, which would create an island, a type of temporary island, if you will. And at that point, if the state felt it was a good project, then we'd talk about the next steps, which would really be, do we do an MPI, which is a partnership initiative with the state, or what would be involved with the next funding level to actually implement a permanent solution?
So Mike, I have a question. This is for $50,000, correct?
Yes.
And this is actually just a temporary solution?
That's correct.
Correct? Yeah.
Yeah, it does require evaluation prior to, so there is gonna be traffic, measuring traffic counts and speeds and things like that, pre and post.
And the yellow, Eric, is lines on the road. It's not a physical, like,
It would be lines with those posts that would go along it to
so it
force
is-
people over.
those orange posts
Yeah.
are down the yellow?
And the posts might be yellow, they might be, but they basically, yes, those are delineators that would force the traffic to move. You can see that it may require us to do some paving as well on the edge, because we may not have quite enough pavement width in that location.
But it'll be a physical barrier. People will see it and need to react. Yes. Come on up.
So the question was, would it be a physical barrier? They are, they're, mind you, they're plastic or high-density polyethylene plastic tubes, if you will, with reflectors on them, which basically push people over.
So what would the next step be after you use this?
So the next step would be that we would go back to the state again. So we would evaluate before the project, evaluate after the project, would provide that data to the state. The state would evaluate that data and just come to a conclusion whether it's a valid project to proceed with. And the next step is really just gathering funding for the actual physical construction of an island, should that be the case.
Who does the evaluation?
It'd be the state traffic engineers.
They would come down and do it
Oh,
before?
no,
like-
I think the burden would be on us, probably hire our engineers to do those counts and such.
And the crosswalk is a white strip across, or is it a physical thing too?
Well, we currently have an island there, so we would probably utilize the Public Works Department to go out and physically remove the granite curbings that are there, provide what we call a refuge in the middle, so the crosswalk would go across that without having any kind of barrier any kind of barrier to stop them from going across that refuge. We call it refuge because you can stop on that island and then continue to cross. So that would be a crosswalk with a refuge in the middle.
And so if the state comes back and says, well, we don't think that you need it, what's the next step then? I mean, is that something that it's a done deal, it's dead in the water, or what?
It's their route, so it is a state route. Our jurisdiction is limited on that, on those routes.
Yeah.
Excellent.
How long would it take to put that in? Sorry.
I don't, that's a good question. I don't think, I mean, it's a matter of it's paint and these delineators, so it shouldn't take more than, take a week or so. I mean, there's a little bit of work that we have to do. We'll need excavators to do the crossing. And my feeling is we probably should do the crossing regardless on Dyke Road.
Did you hear that, Matt? It's gonna take a week.
No, well, not necessarily for the I don't want to.
I don't know, Matt's looking like, I thought he said like 3 days. He did like 3.
Well, but that is because it's on our road, and I think that's an improvement that we can make. That was recommended when we evaluated this originally. Just to make sure that people are getting across the street so that they're not crossing. What was happening is they're crossing diagonally after the island,
Right.
which is obviously a mid-block crossing, which is not safe.
Any more questions for Eric? No?
No.
So next we have our infrastructure projects, and as I've said, besides the street light fixtures, which we've been pegging away at every year, these are our Ocean Avenue, Wanby, Dyke Road resiliency, head of the harbor, and Dock Square, besides the village parcel in the future. So go ahead. You're familiar with the Ocean Avenue resiliency. We have our price in there, and currently we're seeking funding, working towards a FEMA application, and hopefully we'll get something in by the end of January, and we'll see where we stand. Head of the Harbor, we did pause the Head of the Harbor design project because of the 1B design, and we'll get that going again once our application is in on Ocean Avenue. There's more of our flooding from the 2022 storm, and of course, last year we saw a lot of that as well. Yep, we're good. Here's the streetlight fixtures. We are replacing those on an annual basis, and we'll continue to do that until they're all replaced. Dock Square resiliency, this would be, again, this is one of these placeholder numbers. I'm not really sure what it would take. We do have a broad reach grant now of $200,000, and we have received the GoPIF grant of $75,000. So we are working with Southern Maine Planning to begin to gather that data to look at the hydraulics of the area and come up with some potential solutions. Looking at wastewater, you can see that it's pump station, and some smaller projects. I think that these wastewater projects are going to take, you can see in FY27 and in FY29, you're looking at about $3 million per year. What we had talked about in the past with wastewater is that the engineering funds we would incorporate within the operating budget, but those replacement pump station numbers would probably be another bond, and I think you're looking at 2 more bonds of about $3 million apiece. Here's the locations of all the pump stations. Here's
Can you
Ocean.
go back just
Yep.
one second? Thanks.
So Ocean Avenue, this would be the engineering to replace this one. Turbots Creek would also be on the list. And the South Main Street pump station, those are our next priorities. Okay? So now we are moving to equipment. And so as you know, equipment for the most part is on a cyclical cycle, you know, whether it's police cruisers or plow trucks. So we are looking at, in administration, we have the codes vehicle. It'll be 10 years old next year. So we'll be evaluating that at that time. Jay has laid out the fire PPE and vehicle replacements, as we've talked about in the past, as well as the SEBA air packs next year, which would be in FY27 when I say next year. And we're putting reserve funds away, and as well as a boat replacement. So here's our codes vehicle. Here is Jay's vehicle. You can, go back. You can see that we do have rust going on and rust in the frame. Our mechanic has done the best that he can to keep that operational, but we did have it in the list last year to replace in the budget, but with other priorities, it was pushed along. So we need to do something on that. Here's our PPE. We replace so many sets a year. We've talked about the SCBA air packs, so looking at FY27 to replace 40 of them. Here is one of our boats. If you have any questions about that, Jay can come up. Any questions for Jay on fire?
How old is the Ribby, is the boat?
Looks about 20.
Yeah, that boat, to replace it, that's a 2008, it'll be 20 years old. What we've found, having two of them, is that as they get older, they leak so much more, and there's more work that goes into it, and you gotta stay on top of, obviously, keeping it inflated.
Is the motor 20 years old also?
No, the motors have been replaced since I started as the chief.
Okay.
So we're probably wouldn't be, like the boat we bought last year, we didn't buy we used the motor again, we just had it remounted.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
I didn't know you were so interested in boats, Alan.
Boats and lobsters.
Boats and trucks.
He's just trying to see what he's gonna put in for
Oh, I see.
an estimate or whatever.
You can't fish from that one out. It's too
Yeah,
unstable.
can't fish in it, Alan.
Parks and Rec, we have our bus, which is a 2015 coming up, as well as a playground in the future. We have piers, because we are spending so much and investing so much in the pier, I do not anticipate anything in the near future besides hoist replacements. And then I have a condenser evaporator replacement sometime in the future.
So how long do hoists last?
They used to last 4 or 5 years. Now it seems like they only last maybe, if you're lucky, a couple or 3. And they're about 3 times the amount of money. They used to able to buy one for about $2,000. Now I think they're what, $5,000 or $6,000 more.
And it depends on which one we do. And so we have multiple hoists, both at Government Wharf as well as at Cape Porpoise Pier.
The chain hoist, but the fish tackle is a lot more money. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is brand new, so. Any other questions? Bob? No?
So here's our bus. And here's examples of our hoists out there on the pier. So looking at police, we have the replacement of vehicles, which is normal. You know, some years we replace 1, some years we replace 2. There's a couple of things I want Chief Simeone to come up and discuss. One of those is we are looking at, rather than just replacing with another SUV, the possibility of replacing with a truck in the future. We also need to replace our cameras for our cruisers, taser replacement, but also the chief is recommending that we purchase body-worn cameras.
So this is just an image of one of the cars that we want to replace. This is a travel car that we've had since 2016 and be well in excess of 100,000 miles. We'd be looking to replace that car with either a Ford Explorer or a Dodge Durango Pursuit. Either one would be a fine platform. The Dodge Durangos right now are a little bit less expensive. The other vehicle that we're looking to replace this year is also a Dodge Charger. But for a replacement vehicle for this one, could I have the next slide, Dave? We're looking to go with a pickup truck. Routinely, you know, we get called to pick up items that are found property. First example that comes to mind would be kayaks. You know, we generally have a lot of those turn up, a lot of bicycles. Right now with the Ford Explorers, we can't fit any of that stuff in a Ford Explorer. So generally, I'm kind of bugging Matt to go down and pick that stuff up for us. But beyond that, you know, we also have the electronic signs that we put up and move around town throughout the year. It's easier to transport those in a pickup truck and to be able to put them up on the signpost by working out of the back of the truck. Another example would be the storms. You know, before you know, Public Works has to be called in. You know, sometimes there are storms it's not necessary for them to come in for. But if we had a vehicle we could transport barricades, you know, it would be useful in that situation as well. So we're seeing a need for a pickup truck. So
That makes sense.
At least one, I would think, so, but yeah.
yep.
That's a crew cab, right?
Yeah, it would be a crew cab because we would need this to be functional because it would be a frontline vehicle. So if an officer were to have an arrest, we would need a place to put that person and transport them back to the station or to the jail. So. So this is a picture of the cameras that we currently have in the cars. You know, the ones that we have now are 14 years old. They're well beyond their service life. They are still running, but at this point in time, it's probably wise to start rotating these out. They are rather expensive. We just purchased one for the new car that we just upfitted. Cost of that camera was about $6,400 before the install. So they're pretty pricey. This is an image of the body-worn cameras. We haven't had these to date, but I will tell you this is kind of becoming the industry standard. You know, everybody around us has them nationwide. There's a movement toward, you know, getting these for a variety of reasons that are listed here. So I do think it's time that we move toward buying these. And this is FY27. We'd be looking to get rid of the detective vehicle. That vehicle, it's only a 2015, but unfortunately, in speaking with Rick Bleakney, our mechanic, that is starting to get rather tender underneath, and he did not think it was going to take an inspection sticker beyond that time. So. This is a taser. This is one of our use of force options. These currently right now are only going to be supported for probably another year. We're going to have to move up and get the next generation of tasers. It's like anything else. There seems to be planned obsolescence with a lot of this stuff, which kind of forces you to upgrade. So at this point in time, we'd be looking to purchase more as well. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
So next we have Public Works, and there's mostly you can see we're talking about plow trucks and things of that nature. We do have in here a couple of different items. One is the vehicle lift, and the other is a switch and go body coming in we're looking at FY '28. And so I want to have Matt come up and talk a little bit about those. One of the reasons why we're looking, and we have a video on the switch and go body so you can see what it looks like, but one of the things we've been struggling with in the last few years is the number of storms and flooding events we go to, whether it's the ice storm or whether it's flooding. You know, we're constantly putting out barricades, cones, trying to stop people from going in certain locations. And so we had put in the budget a couple of years ago to buy some additional cones and barricades and signage. And so we have been talking about what's the best way to take care of that, because we originally had discussed, should we get a trailer so we put all that stuff in, and, you know, if fire has a big call or they're dealing with ice and trees down, that they could take it, or if we need to go do something for police, you know, and they have an incident, they can use it. I mean, this stuff is multi-use for any kind of emergency. But when we started looking at the trailer and how big it would be in order for it to be user-friendly, it started to get so big it was going to be cumbersome to drive around, and we were limiting the number of people who could access it. And so we've continued to think about that, and we had our public safety team look at that, and this is what their suggestion is, because we could have multi-use with that vehicle for other things with the Public Works Department. Matt?
Yeah, so the current, replace of current vehicle lift is 27,000. The one we have now actually doesn't have the capabilities to pick up our 1 tons. Everything we see nowadays is getting heavier, and the mechanic has to work very hard to make sure he stays safe to do that.
So are you gonna be able to, with a new lift, will you be able to lift the plow trucks?
No, not our 5-ton trucks, but this will have the capability to do our F600, which is a little bit heavier duty 1 ton. It's a 2.5-ton truck.
Okay, thank you.
This is our tandem axle trailer. It is in pretty rough shape, but we have used this daily for my entire tenure of 8 years. It's something that if we wouldn't have, it would be a struggle to do everyday life with.
Did this get fixed up for the picture too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
You
the
should have
good
seen
this
it
is-
before.
Nice.
So the switch and go body, this takes 1 truck and kind of turns it into 3. It turns into a utility truck. The system uses different platform systems, so we are able to take them off the body quickly and grab another one. Going on a day-to-day kind of scenario, we would use a flatbed, so it would be a frontline truck. We could do it every day. It comes with dumpsters. We're looking at an enclosed kind of box, so we can have an emergency response system as well. So PD can use it, fire department can use it, and anyone can use it.
How quickly can you switch it?
Do you want to play the video?
Yeah.
Yeah.
do the video first.
It's a good dumpster.
Oh, that's interesting. It pulls up.
Wow.
So that price, is that just for the truck itself, or does it come with the bodies?
That was the truck itself, the switch and go system, and 3 platforms.
What are we switching it to though?
So this is just a regular mason body it's showing. You can put dumpsters on it. You can put, they really have a huge line of different bodies.
What are
So our
we
thought
looking
is that with the emergency equipment, we would develop, you know, a container that could easily go on that. So it would sit at Public Works facility when it's needed. You would take the dump body off within seconds and put that one on and you could go. But you could continue to use, so it wouldn't be a one-purpose vehicle.
Right.
So when you need it, you could use it for that, but otherwise you would use it in their normal operations with another body.
Because normally that would have just sat for a long time. That's just brilliant.
It appears that it's really quick in
It
changing the
is.
bodies.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's very quick. I mean, probably in the whole length of it, it's probably 2 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So is this like an industry standard, or is this gonna like time
It's-
out after years?
It's relatively new, and there seems to be an influx of contractors using them. We're seeing other municipals use them, because you can actually pull a sander up on top of it instead of putting a sander in the actual dump body. It's a little bit more safe. It's secure to the truck.
And so then just for the body, it's 125?
No, it gives you three.
It gives you the three?
That is the truck and the switch and go system with 3 total platforms.
And a set of Ginzu knives.
Instead of what?
Ginzu knives.
Maybe a hat or two, who knows?
Okay, interesting.
Actually, I think that number had the plow and everything in it too.
That doesn't count the containers that you need to switch them. Like if you want a flatbed, you're gonna have to buy a flatbed.
So that number
It's
has,
in 3.
3 options.
3 options
Yeah.
in it.
Okay.
Flatbed, container,
It's like a menu you can pick.
it's a no-brainer.
I mean, we see a lot of the times where we could use a dumpster, we put that in there. A lot of beach cleanups we've helped out. And instead of losing a truck for the weekend or for a couple of days, we can just drop cans off
You
and then
could
pick
leave
them up.
the bed there too, couldn't you?
Yes,
But
exactly.
Fill it up and go back and retrieve it.
Yep.
Brilliant.
Any more questions about the truck?
No, it's pretty
No?
cool.
Thank you.
Switch and go. I'd like a switch and go body.
Well, you're gonna have to get in line up first. I'm older than you are.
New set of knees.
So next we have wastewater, and I'm gonna have Eric, and he's gonna bring up our new wastewater operations manager so you can meet him. And he's gonna talk about why he needs $200,000 for a truck.
Yes, I'd like to introduce Peter Conroy, who's our operations manager on the wastewater side. He's joined us. He's been a great addition to the department. He comes from the city of Portsmouth and been a lifelong wastewater operator and manager. So we're very happy to have him on board. It's a great asset. So
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome, Peter.
How much do you need?
so not
He would have been helpful this summer.
So the big ticket item that we have here is the service truck. So our service truck is a 2013 truck. It gets daily use. That's basically our workhorse, if you will. Whenever we get a call out, this is the vehicle that goes out, has all our equipment on it, has a crane on it, which is required to do any kind of work on any of the pump stations, large or small. Requires that crane to be able to pull pumps. So our intention is to go to an F600, similar to what Matt spoke about, the kind of a 2.5-ton truck. Part of the problems with having a truck that is a workhorse, especially with a crane and other, it really leverages the frames on these vehicles, and so we want to go to something a little bit beefier for this. This would involve having a crane on it, would also include having all the utility boxes and such, and necessary hydraulic mechanisms required to be able to run this equipment. So that's the price. It's one of those only tool that we have for this particular job. So that's kind of a must-have. It's a must-have piece of equipment because that is the tool. That's the call-out tool that we have. So.
And that's gonna be in this, that's 26, that's a, yeah.
That'll be, yep, FY 26, that, and as well as blower reconfigurations, but those are, it's more for saving money. We want to actually do modifications to our blowers. That's more in the plant. I'm not sure I would get into weeds of that, but basically if we could reduce the amount of air that we generate at the plant, we could save a little bit of money, and it's something we want to be doing.
Can I go back to pump stations really quick? You don't have to change the slide.
Yep.
I just had a quick question. So the pump station down on the west end of the beach, are we sure that we're okay with the height? I think I've asked this before, and I know we have plans for, eventually on the resiliency stuff to look at Dyke Road. But in that pump station right there, what's the water level that we could actually handle before we get into trouble?
I mean, the pumps themselves are okay because they're submersible pumps. If additional water.
Yeah, it would be mostly the electronic systems,
Right,
what I'm talking
exactly.
about.
So our control panels is what we worry about. Right now, we have placed, like this year, we placed some money aside to be able to try to move some of our control panels in the large pump station because it's actually below sea level, where it is the way it's designed now. It's actually down in a dry well that is actually, and we want to bring that equipment up to a higher level. On the two ends, if you will, there's two smaller pump stations that we have. At some point, we'll need to be thinking about that. We're looking at the larger pump stations right now because those are our workhorses, if you will. Number 12, which is the one that is right there near Dyke Road, that is the pump station that goes all the way back to Mill Road for us. So that's our most critical one. If something should happen in one of the two ends, we did purchase a transfer pump a couple of years ago for that reason. Could we, set that up and do some kind of bypass pumping? We would probably, if something completely failed there, we would likely be able to keep up either with trucking and hauling it to another manhole near number 12, which is the larger pump station, or we might be able to bypass pump. So we're less concerned about those smaller pump stations just because of volume. So the way we look at it is really how much volume can we manage, because those two ends just don't take as much flow as that big station in number 12.
Right,
So,
okay,
yep.
thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
So, under administration is usually a lot of engineering fees or design fees, things of that nature. But we want to just, we're still looking for an option regarding our finance software. Nicole, do you want to say a few words?
We're still searching for the best software. We've looked at a few options. We're looking for the best investment for the town that would do integration. And, we would like a citizens portal. So, we're still searching for the best option and we have not found it yet.
How many choices are there?
Not many.
Not many. We have one that we really were looking at, but we got feedback from some other towns that the clerk's portion of it doesn't work as well. So we're trying to decide if we pick one software, if we go with two separate softwares, but we're still looking for like the integration like today.
Our hope was to have integration with planning as well, but it feels like everyone is becoming more and more specialized, and our current finance software trio is broken. There's no other words for it. When we do payroll, Elizabeth has to call Trio for them to run our payroll reports. We can't even run them anymore because of an upgrade they did. And we have issues with our project accounting, which is something that we use a lot in our Parks and Rec special revenue, and we would use it in our capital. And we found that we went to Web Trio a couple of years ago, and we were just looking at some of the audit numbers, and something happened in the reporting of that. So it took some of our expenses from one year and made them beginning balances for the next year. And so we really need to find a better finance software. These companies have been bought up by these equity firms that are not investing in the software anymore. And so the problem is, it looks like we can't find an integrated solution. And so we're going to have to make that choice. Next. So we have our records preservation. We're continuing on, and Tracy is heading up that project. And then I'll have the chief talk about police software.
So IMC is the CAD system that we've been using for the last 20 years now.
Can you explain CAD?
Sure. So this is anytime an officer gets called to any type of a call, and we have to document that. That's where we do our, incident reports, our arrest reports, our accident reports. So this system houses all of that information. We were told that, again, unfortunately.
This system is used throughout the state and the county.
It is, yeah, so it's used by most of the law enforcement agencies in this area. The reason being is it gives us the ability to kind of search cross-agency. So, if we were to, deal with somebody here in town, we're actually able to run that person in the other surrounding agencies to see if they've had contact with that person. So it's very beneficial for that. However, the product's not going to be supported much longer. They haven't actually given us a real time frame. But based on that, obviously, we've started to do our homework because we need to find another product to go with. So an RFP was sent out through York County government to look at other products that we might be able to use. Right now, we're currently in the process of reviewing the submittals that came in for that. So be a little bit longer before we probably understand what we're looking at. But again, it makes sense for most of the agencies to go with the same products so that we can have that ability to search each other's information. So initial estimate that Chief Sanford had gotten was right around $260,000 to replace that for our agency. We don't have pricing back yet, so this is kind of a guess for now. But likely what we would look to do is start funding this now through a reserve program where we put a piece of money away every year so that we can have that when the time comes.
And will this be, so is York County, so everybody's making a decision together, or are all the towns making separate?
Yeah, I mean, there are some other agencies here that have gone with another product already. And may not end up being the same product that we choose, but I think we're looking to make a concerted effort at picking the same product for those that haven't already changed. Okay. So we'd look to have the vast majority of the agencies here into the same CAD system. So.
Okay. That's for FY '29.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Right. Thanks. So one of the things we wanted to look at was some of these projects are recommended to be paid for with bonds. So keep in mind this is wastewater bonds paid. Those are split, those payments between wastewater user fees and property taxes. And so if in the blue you see our current debt, and these are our payments. So keep that in mind in this chart. These are not our long-term outstanding debt. So you can see on an annual basis what those payments would be, and then we have made predictions about what kind of debt size we would need and when those payments would come to fruition. So we have on the future debt list Town Hall, the Village Fire Station, those 2 wastewater projects, and a public works facility. So if we were to do all those through debt at those amounts, this is potentially what that could do to our debt payments. Okay. This is just a comparison of our budgetary capital expenses. So as we've talked about, we have different funding sources. And I think Kennebunkport has done a great job of continuing to invest in capital in their operating budget. And so you can see from FY20 what the capital investment has been. So you can see in the first line down below how much the capital was that was approved for that budget. Then we have used our capital use of our capital reserve fund balance to help offset those costs. And then what nets out is the capital impact on the budget. And so that's what those bars represent. You can see in FY21 it dropped. That was the COVID budget year where we cut a lot of projects and operational costs. And what we've seen since COVID, is just the price increases on capital items. So you can see in FY26 that right now the operating budget would have 2.8 million, and that includes wastewater, keep in mind as well. And since we haven't had our audit finalized yet, I just put a $300,000 placeholder in the use of capital reserve fund balance, which would bring us down to about 2.5 million. So that's our presentation, and, you know, we're just looking for feedback from the board, and all the department directors are here to answer any questions you guys have.
Does anybody have any questions?
The question is just a comment. I mean, we are an aging town. A lot of our building infrastructure particularly is 20, 30, 40 years old. And there are some expenses that need to be incurred. So I support the work that Lori's done in putting this together.
Yeah, so I think this has been extremely helpful. I think the outlook on the infrastructure and the buildings is very helpful too, to give us what needs. I think I'm aligned with what John said, is that we're an aging, and it seems like we've not purposely let some things go, but it's all sort of bubbling up at a certain time, and we have to take care of it. So I feel, as you know, how I'm looking at going through the budget process is acknowledging that we have to shore up some of these, and we have to do. To me, it's like we have to get the foundation of the house back before we could start talking about what color the walls are going to be and what color we're going to buy furniture, you know, using an analogy, right?
Yeah.
So I look at that as in terms of, you know, that in reference also with our resiliency funds, right? And again, I'll say, like we have in previous meetings, to me, the resiliency funds, you can argue about climate change all day, 6 away to sunrise. It's not the discussion. The discussion is that we have, just like we have an aging roads, we have aging sewer systems, we also have aging coastline. And we have aging piers that are holding buildings up. So we have to look at shoring up, literally, and pun intended, you know, all the stuff that we have listed. I think we have to, going through the cycle of the budget, we do have to look at how we calendarize things. I think this was a great first pass, but I'm looking at maybe some of the softer stuff, and I don't know what that is yet, but we have to keep our eyes on letting some of the softer stuff go. And I think from my perspective, and I'll leave it at this, from my perspective, you know, we talk about, you know, we have a lot of committees and stuff, and we have a lot of aspirations within this town. But again, I go back to, we've got to put some serious cash in our infrastructure. And I feel that that's where we've got to put a lot of heat and light. And then as we get out of this part, you know, then we can start expanding into maybe some other aspirational things that we want to do.
Well, this is actually a pretty good path. I mean, you brought a lot of things to us that needs attention, and sometimes you have to pick and choose what is the most important at that time, but it's a really good path to go. It's a roadmap, really, actually. And thank you very much for doing it.
That's
a lot of work.
It was a lot of work, I think, you guys. I think as John and Mary Beth have said, towns sometimes just not neglect intentionally, but it just, buildings age and they need improvements, and they seem to all come at the same time. And, you know, the one thing about this town is I think we are committed to having good infrastructure, good roads, good equipment. I think it's what the people in town want. And so I think this was a lot of work, very helpful. We'll have to go through it a little bit more. You know, a couple of weeks ago, you gave us sort of the list of the priorities, which I think we need to take that and look at this and figure out, and maybe some things need to get moved a year or two, but I think investing in the town and keeping its foundation straight. And Public Works building, you should have left that picture.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think, you know, there's no point buying the equipment and not having a building to put it in.
Yeah, we can't,
So-
we have to protect our assets,
Right.
people,
So-
residents, employees, and
Yeah.
if there's no other comment, John and I have to bring something back to the board. So we had the Town Hall Committee, Alan Evelyn that's here, presented to you last meeting or two meetings ago. And we tabled the recommendation until we went through the capital plan. And so what the committee had asked for with John and myself is that we move forward with the town hall work for the fire station site as a site and go through that next level of steps, which would be further build out of the site, answering some of the questions that got brought up by residents, as well as, starting down the cost estimation, which would give us, a number. And we, like Lori said, when she started off with the capital plan, these were placeholders, and so the, with this whole overarching viewpoint, that's what we would be wanting the town hall committee to move forward with. So I, after going through the capital plan, I'm in agreement of moving forward with that. I'm asking for the rest, John and the rest of the board to weigh in.
I'm in favor of moving forward with that plan.
Sure. Dave?
Dave?
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay. Number 8, consider tennis court bids. Good evening.
Hello. I am here tonight to talk about bids for the tennis court and basketball court resurfacing project down at Rotary Park. In December, we went out for bids for the resurfacing project. We received 2 bids back. Those bids were from Maine Tennis and Track and Sports Tech Athletic Services. Sports Tech Athletic Services was about $1,000 more than Maine Tennis and Track, but they are able to get the work done this year. And so, given the condition of the courts down there, I do recommend that we go with the more expensive one by $1,000 of Sports Tech Athletic Services in the amount of $43,900 so that we can get the work done this year.
So an extra 1,000
Yeah, but
for a Massachusetts-based company?
one part out of 44, I think it's worth it for because the courts are getting dangerous.
Yes.
Yeah. And is there a time frame? Would that be early?
They would have it done by June 1st.
That's a good,
That's a good time to have it done.
yep.
And we're keeping 2 tennis courts.
2 tennis courts.
And 4 pickleball
Yes,
courts.
4
And
pickleball
then-
courts, and then we're gonna also lay a pickleball court on top of the basketball court.
Oh, really?
Really?
You can put some,
We're not gonna have any fencing yet, but we'll have a portable net to use down there.
We're gonna put one out in the
They'll
road,
just have to
too.
chase balls more.
yeah. Having actually just a little bit of, it doesn't have to be high.
John,
Yeah.
Just,
John.
well,
John?
John.
it's important. 3 or 4 feet between the court and the road.
Yes.
Because the balls roll off into the briars there. Tennis people don't worry about that, but us pickleball folks, yeah.
Are you
I
Yeah,
will look
tennis
into
ball
it.
people,
You're a pickleball guy?
yeah, tennis ball people, we sort of keep the ball on the court.
Yeah, yeah. That's why you need those high fences.
Do I have a motion?
I will make a motion to award the bid to Sports Tech Athletic Services for $43,900.
Second?
Have a first and a second. Any more discussion?
Nope.
Hearing none? All in favor? Here we
Thank
go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 9, Climate Resiliency Committee Quarterly Update. Here we go.
It's gonna be big. Okay, so my name is Ben Midgley. I'm a resident of the town. I'm a last-minute fill-in for this, so I don't have a 20-minute presentation, but I need my computer to have
Good.
it. So, it's gonna be about three minutes. All right, so I'm the co-chair of our Climate Resiliency Committee, which is an extension of the Climate Action Plan that the town put in place a few months back. And for those of you who don't know, and since this is recorded, a brief overview of what we do. We're a group of 7 community members selected and directed by the town select board. And we have 2 town select board members that work with us, John and Mary Beth. We meet once per month. We have no authority to make decisions and have no budget by design. Our primary focus, as is similar with other southern Maine communities, is climate resiliency, especially coastal waterways and the effect of rising water, which we have a lot, which I brought up earlier. Our group has a nice blend of members with diverse perspectives that has allowed for respectful, engaging conversation on projects that we may be able to pursue that align with our objective. So it's not just a group of people who sit around and all have the same idea and say, let's just approve everything that we think could help, okay? We have substantive professional dialogue on the pros and cons of the ideas and distill that down to the ones that we can all agree on that are not overly complex and align with our objectives. Progress so far. So we have reviewed all the resiliency projects the town has identified, courtesy of Mary Beth and John, and the funding sources for those. So the committee understood all of those. We have engaged with the SMPDC, the Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission, which you all are familiar with, to research what other grant opportunities may be available. When we were at one of the events, we noticed a lot of towns are getting some increasing fund levels, so we wanted to try to hunt that down some more. Some state funds have also been released, which I think you probably heard of just a few days ago. They have some more opportunities for that. Several committee members attended the SMPDC and the UNE Southern Maine Climate Action Workshop. I was one of them, to be sure we're up on what all other towns in our area are doing, as well as the county and state level in regard to resiliency. We agreed upon an energy navigator project for the town's website that we're working on partnering with UNE students and SMPDC to develop, of which John and Mary Beth are both helping out with. This would be a staged development focused on creating a single source site that would educate and guide residents interested in making an energy conversion or conservation decision. We've all reviewed the available resources that are similar to this, and none provide a single source guide that is robust enough to effectively encourage more adoption of clean energy conversion or conservation projects. So we think this will be very helpful once developed to get more residents moving down the path of making a transition to clean energy or saving more energy. Going forward, we continue to work within the framework the Select Board has set for the committee. We are engaging in conversations with other communities and third-party groups on how to expand what we can provide to the community, and we also continue to look for additional grants and or other sources of constructive, innovative programs from around the country that may help us with climate resiliency and encourage more clean energy conversion and conversation activities locally.
Nice. Thanks.
That's it.
Can I, in your opinion, you don't have to just answer it, but are we more advanced than some of our neighboring communities?
So you have to know that on the board, David is the most competitive one out of all of us.
Oh, yeah.
So go ahead.
No, I'm just curious. Do you feel that that the town is a little bit ahead of the other communities in your county, or a little bit, do we need to step some things up, or?
Well, I'm not an expert in all of this, right? But from an opinion and what we saw at the event at UNE, I think we're probably ahead of them to a certain degree, also because we're forced to be. We have a lot more water coming at us, and it affects a lot more areas of the town. The struggle I think you find with all the communities is resources, is money, right? Everything comes down to money. You could do 20 projects in town if you had extra resources. So, and then the other side of that is, trying to get the community to, reduce emissions, conserve energy. It all works in the big picture, and but you can't, force people to do that. So we're trying to find the best ways to get people to say, you know what, let's save a lot of money here.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
So I have before Ben, before you leave.
Yeah.
So we have two things. One is Nadia is also on our committee.
She's
from
not
the-
on your committee.
Not on the
She
committee. She supports the committee.
Does a
Thank
great
you.
job.
She's staff support, does a great job. And so the other thing that we wanted to talk to the board about, John and I, is that, along with the committee coming back and given the objective that, the one that they're working on, the navigator, we think that they have a little bit more bandwidth to investigate something else. So Lori had keyed John and myself into a program that the state of Maine put on this week, which was a lunch and learn about doing solar farms on capped landfills. So it's a very, broad scope, broad brush thing, but it might be something that this committee could start to look at, right? So we need a group of people to start investigating, is there there? We already know that there might be some potential really big cost inhibitors, but as John would like to say, we'd like to try to run this to ground.
So we're really asking the board to be sure, looking at the possibility of placing a relatively large, it could be up to a 1 megawatt generation field. Again, there are a lot of constraints and technical hurdles that would need to be investigated, but there are assets out there and resources that will help us do that. So with your permission, we'd like to engage the CRC in pursuing that.
Yeah.
That's fine, I'm fine with that.
Perfect.
And then I just want to make sure that, per our last capital discussion, that when we're looking at these things, is that, you know, we're really trying to do this with I'll use the term net zero cost, you know, so we have to look, you know, so we would want this team to work with these different groups to see what are the options. Like, some of the options is that you can lease the land out to somebody to do this and then get some energy off. So there's multiple things that we would want this group to look at to see what would be the best option for the town at no cost, or
Or possibly a positive. So
positive,
Yeah.
or positive.
No, I think I have no problem with that, and I think there's communities that we can actually, you guys can look into. Chelmsford, Mass comes to it, has done it. I mean, there are other.
Just looking at a project in Boston
Yeah,
today.
There's
so-
several around Maine that
Yeah,
have done it.
so
on
there
landfill.
are towns that do it in landfills, and what else are you gonna do with a landfill, really? So, I mean,
It's perfect.
I'd rather use a landfill than just taking some vacant land that could have been.
It's already
So-
cleared.
Yeah.
There's a lot
So-
of pluses.
Yeah, I think it's a great
Good.
idea.
Yep,
All right,
thanks.
great.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. Okay. 10, consider proposed June 2025 ordinances or ordinance changes.
Yeah, so we have Nadia here tonight. And Galen is on Zoom.
I think that Galen is starting us off with floodplain, and I'll take over for land use.
So is Galen here?
Galen with us?
I'm here.
Hello, Galen.
Hello.
Hey, Galen, we hear
Evening,
you.
Select Board. How are you?
Where are you?
Good, thank you.
All right. The first ordinance draft that is in front of you is regarding the floodplain management ordinance. Just as a brief summary, what this ordinance does is when we adopted our floodplain management ordinance last year, you'll notice that we did not have in the draft model ordinance that was provided by the state with an AO zone. So an AO zone is an area that is of a special flood hazard within that 1% per year risk, but it has sheet flow flooding. So where this is more common and where this is actually prevalent in Kennebunkport is on any coastal bluff. So you have the wave action that hits the bluff and then it falls down and sheets across. And so we did not have performance standards when we adopted the model ordinance for the AO zone. But when we adopted the ordinance and we had the map change with the LOMAR, that's the letter of map revision that occurred after it was in the to our. So we're just
Galen, you're breaking up.
adding.
We're losing you, Galen.
Sorry.
Can you move closer to a window, or do you have video running?
The video has jitter.
Can you turn off your video? Turn off your video.
Is this better?
Yeah, I
Well,
think it's
right
using your
moment,
bandwidth. Let's
yeah.
give it a go.
Where did I leave you at?
Go back a paragraph.
Letter of map provision.
When we adopted
No?
with the model, I
So-
have the AO.
So maybe I'll take over for Galen here. So when the town adopted our most recent, and I apologize, I'm not as much of an expert in this as Galen is, but when the town adopted the letter of map revision, the AO zone was reinstated in parts of the coastline to reflect what the town's hired consultant had to say. So the AO zone includes areas within the 1% annual flood hazard risk area. And these are areas that experience shallow sheet flooding, such as areas near streams and rivers. But coastal bluffs and other similar areas also experience this type of flooding. Town staff have communicated with the state regarding these provisions, and the state has agreed that the proposed changes will keep the town in compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program.
So I just have I read through this and I was just trying to understand. So, we have the flood, the new Lomar, and we have houses now that are in that zone that can go through the elevation. The state the state now approved elevation. So does this AO zone extend that to include more residents? That's where I was, I didn't really know. I understand what the AO zone, I understand the definition, but I didn't know the impact for the rest of our ordinances. Are we expanding some kind of thing where more people are going to be able to do stuff? Or is this, you know, I didn't understand.
So that's a great question. I'm not entirely sure of the answer. My understanding was that the Lomar actually took a lot of people out of the flood zone.
Right,
They did,
right.
'cause it lowered the level.
Right.
Exactly, lowered it by 2
So,
feet.
so I think all we're doing is we're making our ordinance language reflect what the map
Exactly.
is showing. Because our ordinance language doesn't, because it was based on the new map from the state. And once the Lomar was adopted then by FEMA, now our ordinance language is out of sync with the map.
Was this
Okay.
a new zone that was added? The AO wasn't?
We used to have an AO zone, and they took it out with the new.
I see.
And so now with our Lomar, because like you said, we lowered that, the AO is back.
But is AO encapsulated in Lomar? So Lomar includes it and we just had to put the language back
Yes.
in? Or does AO sit outside and we've expanded our?
No.
Okay, so AO sits inside the Lomar line. So if those people that were in the floodplain before that are no longer in with the new Lomar are not going to be in with this AO zone.
So can you say that again?
Yeah, I don't know. The map,
I can tell when I lost her because she's like, "What you just?"
So I think the confusion here is that the AO zone, and Galen, if your microphone is working, correct me if I'm wrong. The AO zone is pretty semantic in a lot of ways in the update that we're making. It's not really changing.
It doesn't
the flood
change a
zone.
line.
No,
It doesn't.
it's not changing the line. It's purely language based. But everyone who is currently in
So
the
that
flood zone will
Lomar
still be in the
line
flood zone.
Where somebody before used to be in a floodplain, but now they're no longer. This language change doesn't bring them back into the flood.
No, this is not
Okay.
changing the actual lines on the
Got it.
floodplain maps.
Thank you. That was my question. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Nope.
All right, so I can take over here for land use. So
was that the only one for the,
Yeah, it's just AO.
just the AO?
yeah, just the AO zone. So for land use, the planning and development team has been working with the growth planning committee to do some updates to the land use ordinance, and I think that you guys have certainly heard some of this coming around, but we're proposing for June a pretty minimal change, just some mild changes to a few sections. We have some larger changes in the pipeline, but we have some more research and discussion to do on those. So the changes that you have before you that are mentioned in your memo are very minimal changes, just in keeping with Chapter 1000 and things that we have noticed are
Can you
important.
just tell us what Chapter 1000 is?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Chapter 1000 is the guidance that the state provides in shoreland zoning to municipalities.
Okay, thank you.
So, starting off with definitions, I brought some props here for this. We've been using this in our presentations to people. So, one of the biggest things that we're seeing people struggle with is people that are in that flood zone that we were talking about earlier are needing to elevate their houses. But in our ordinance, it's pretty restrictive on the regarding the height that people are allowed to elevate their homes to. So one of the big changes here that we're allowing is a change in the building height definition within the shoreland zone. So this would allow people to elevate their home to the required level above the floodplain, which is 2 to 3 feet higher than what the floodplain is. So if you're in flood zone 14, you can elevate your house to 16 feet above sea level, basically. So this is just a little prop showing how this affects how building height is measured. So basically, this proposed change is allowing building height for people who have elevated their home to be in accordance with the floodplain ordinance to measure their building height from the sill instead of from the ground. So here you can see we have a building that has not been elevated at all is being measured from the ground to the roof. This building is elevated 2 feet above base flood elevation, which is represented by this blue line here, and their height is now being measured from the sill to the roof as opposed from the ground to the roof. If they elevate above 2 feet above base flood elevation, they're back to being measured from the ground, which is this far left example over here. So that's just.
Nope, you understood what you just said.
Yeah, the middle
Okay.
one.
But let's
Yeah.
put that one back up. When you talk about a sill, you're talking about the top of the foundation, basically, the lower part of the house?
Yep, basically the bottom piece of the floor. So yes, starting after the foundation.
Top of the foundation, basically. Okay, that one I got. It's the other one. What's the
Middle.
far, what's the far right? You still have a question in the middle?
So the middle one was, let me see if I got this. The middle one was, the blue line's the floodplain, and I moved the sill up 2 feet?
So I guess let me start over a little bit. So our base flood elevation is the number of feet above sea level that basically you're expecting the flood to go. So if you're in zone 9, you're expecting the flood to come 9 feet above sea level. For you, that might be 1 foot above the ground, depending on how high your actual topography is. But when we're talking about base flood elevation, that's what we mean. However many feet above sea level you're expecting the water to rise.
Don't say sea level, above the flood level.
No, base flood elevation is feet above sea level. So you're.
Oh, right, I see what you're saying.
Yep. So when you're measuring, like if you're measuring the topography of a site, if you're at 8 feet, then and you're in flood zone 9, then you're expecting the water to come 1 foot above the ground, basically. So you're allowed to raise your house already, per our ordinance, 2 to 3 feet, whichever is greater, which in this case is 3 feet, above base flood elevation. The sill of your house is allowed to go 3 feet above the base flood elevation. So if you're in zone 9, your sill is allowed to go up to 12 feet above the sea level.
Okay.
So if you are already, if the topography of your site is at 8 feet, that lets you go 4 feet above the actual ground level. So what this is showing is that your home that you've raised 3 feet above base flood elevation is not being measured. Let's say you have a 30-foot home, you go up 4 feet. Your house is not 34 feet now, your house is still 30 feet because it's being measured from the sill, not from the ground. If you choose to raise your home 6 feet, you've gone higher than the ordinance requires, and so now you're being measured from the ground again, because you've exceeded what we actually require of your home.
Which essentially would prevent you from doing that.
Depending on how tall your house is. If
Well,
you have
right, but if your house was at the max, you're not gonna have to go
Yes.
up. Okay.
So basically, we're preventing people from creating skyscrapers on stilts.
So we are, so thank you for that, and I do love the Legos.
The Legos are very
They're very helpful.
They've been very
actually
helpful.
very-
I think
Very
they're
good.
useful to visualize a little bit.
So this is only for houses in the flood. All the other language for houses doesn't go from the sill.
That's
when
correct.
you're
This is
measuring
within the
height.
shoreland zone. So if you can be in the shoreland zone and not in the floodplain. But this specific language only allows people to raise their homes with this new building height definition in accordance with the floodplain ordinance, which requires them to be in the floodplain. So if you're raising your house in the shoreland zone outside of the floodplain, this wouldn't apply just because we don't require you to build above
But what,
that base flood elevation.
but just, so I think we changed the definition of what we measure from too, right? So in the floodplain zone, we measure from the sill. If I'm not in the floodplain zone, where do I measure my house height from? The ground.
Yes.
That'd be from
Okay,
the ground.
okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I get it now.
Okay.
So
right in
you
there.
don't require new homes to be built on stilts in the shoreland zone?
If someone built a new home in the floodplain, they would have to build it 2 to 3 feet above base flood
So that's
elevation.
required?
Yes.
Okay.
And that can be done, that doesn't have to be on stilts. There are a couple options for people to build homes that way. They can have a foundation with flood vents, they can have stilts. There are a few different options for people to do that, but yes, if there's new construction in the floodplain, it does have to meet our floodplain standards.
You can also build your land up too, right?
Yes, it's not necessarily the best option.
could wash
But
out.
yeah, it's not 100%, but it is an option, yes.
So if I'm building a new home and I build it the 3 feet that it allows me, but I wanted to compensate for that low bar and build it actually 5 feet, I would just have to take the height of my home down
Down.
2 feet.
Yes.
Basically, instead of 34, I'd
Yeah.
have 32.
You don't get the,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep, in that case, your ground to peak measurement would have to line up with our ordinance, not your sill to peak measurement.
Oh, you see, I get even worse.
You get
really
worse.
hit then.
Yeah, you get
Yes.
worse.
I'd
And
have
then,
to lose 6 feet on my house.
and then when you,
Two.
does this also change, so in our base ordinance, does it peak as like chimney height or?
I believe that the peak is the point of the roof.
Okay.
This actually explicitly
This one
excludes
says it's-
chimneys and
yeah.
anything that doesn't have an actual
Yeah,
floor
I didn't know
area.
if they were given some, okay, good.
It excludes chimneys?
This
Yes,
one.
this definition of building height excludes chimneys and anything with no floor area.
You
So
can't build
chimneys,
a chimney
antennae.
The whole perimeter of the house, though, that's not allowed.
So we have a couple more definitions. We've added a definition for hazard tree. That's to aid in the hazard tree section that's added into the ordinance later on. Hazard tree, sapling, seedling, and storm damaged tree. So just some tree language to aid in further sections. Article 5 is where a lot of our changes are taking place. That's the Shoreland and Resource Protection Performance Standards. Since Chapter 1000 is dealing with shoreland zoning, a lot of the changes that it suggests are going to be seen in this Article 5 of your land use ordinance. So the first change we have is to 5.11. This is just removing the Waterfront Advisory Committee from a section in structures and uses extending over below the normal high water line. We don't have a Waterfront Advisory Committee, which is the reason it's being removed. What the ordinance currently gives to the Waterfront Advisory Committee has past practice has just been the select board making those decisions. So we just removed it to clarify the language. Since it's something we don't have, it does not really seem necessary to leave in our ordinance.
Nadia, can you
yes.
just, I'm sorry. So what does the addition of shoreland in the title, you added in and shore stabilization? Does that bring in some other meaning, or is it purely that you're just trying to keep titles the same?
I don't believe it brings in, so this is extending, structures and uses extending over or below normal high water line or within wetland and shore stabilization. So it's just expanding that range a little bit. I would need to do, I need to check in about specific definition of the area that shore stabilization is covering. I don't have that information off the top of my head.
Yeah, I guess my question stems from when I was reading through it, I didn't know if this brought in more things, I didn't.
I think it probably does. I mean, we probably didn't have much shore stabilization before that. I wonder if this is reflecting the fact that we're going to be doing more of that in the future.
There is more to this section in the changes we're still working on with the Growth Planning Committee. There is more to this section that has additions in it, and so the shore stabilization is pulling from those additional added sections. So adding shore stabilization to the actual title right now is not really a necessity, but kind of preparatory for the future when we expect to continue expanding these shoreland performance standards.
Okay.
Any more questions on that section? So our next sections are moving on to hazard and storm damaged trees. This is language lifted directly from Chapter 1000. We've made no changes, except in any case that there's Kennebunkport specific language. We've left the size of the trees the same and everything. So this is something that we're seeing a lot of need for in the community. We have our code enforcement officers are in charge of giving out permits for tree removal in the shoreland zone. And with all the storms that we're having, and we have, trees have been around for a long time, they sometimes become damaged and are hazardous and therefore need to be removed. And we don't really have language in our ordinance right now that allows for the code enforcement officer to approve removal of hazard trees without a permit. So that's what this is allowing. It's defining hazard trees, defining replanting standards. And like I said, this language is lifted right from Chapter 1000, so it is coming from state guidelines and what they would like to see for communities in the state.
But again, without a permit, but after consultation with the code.
Yes.
So they still need a
A
permit.
meeting,
Yeah.
yes.
They need an agreement from the
Mhm.
town.
So that one of the benefits of not having to have a permit, although you have to have a consultation with the code officer, is it does not incur the additional cost of pulling a permit from our office.
So in reading through this section, I think just a couple points from my perspective. The definition of the hazard tree, when I was reading through stuff, we always seem to leave out power lines. And, you know, to me, so I read how we're not including, you know, hurricanes, microbursts, you know, that type of stuff, and I'm okay with that. But we do live in a land of ice storms, and we do live in a land of heavy snow on tree limbs, and then the wind kicks up. And so, you know, I look at this as trying to find a balance. And so this is, like, from my perspective, a request, you know, how I'm looking at this, and a thing that I would like to see from what our town is doing is to get us a little bit more compliant in finding that balance between keeping things away from power lines, you know, while also keeping vegetation. So I would actually like to see power lines, you know, put in this in terms of, you know, because you're looking at things hazard to structures, but there's also a big hazard, and it costs a lot of money. And it also costs a lot to people's well-being when we lose powers, when the trees take the power lines down. And, you know, this is a real thing in our town.
So if you had a definition that says a target area is where personal injury or property damage could occur if the tree or portion of the tree falls, I wonder if it could you add, instead of just property damage, personal injury, potential impact, electrical infrastructure, or property damage?
Yeah, I would, yeah, and then specifically power lines, I think, too.
Well, power lines are lines between homes,
Yeah.
homes, and but would that be something to consider? Could you take that under consideration?
Certainly something to consider. The only thing, so I don't personally know the answer to this. I know that we have, that sometimes what we are allowed to require around power lines is a little shaky because of CMP. They have a lot of jurisdiction over the power lines, and I simply don't know the answer to
Well, they
that
have
question.
jurisdiction over the power lines. I've got the power line that runs through my property, right? So, but I am not supposed to plant anything within so many feet of that easement, in that easement that they have. And they actually come and sometimes just spray some, God only knows what chemical, and all of a sudden I got dead stuff on the property. So to Mary Beth's point, I mean, maybe there is some language that could kind of, so if someone's got this issue by power lines on their property, it's just, you can't require them to put a tree there if they have to remove a tree. You know, that's what I'm trying
Sure.
to, I mean, if they get a tree that's fallen on the power lines, there's no point removing that tree and then requiring them to plant another tree. That's in 5 or 10 years is gonna have the same issue. So I just think there may be something we could do about power lines.
Yeah, so I came from a land, it's always you bring in your background, right? So I came from a land where the power companies used to go in, and we used to be like 20 feet away from lines. And then when I moved here, I was like, whoa, you know, we've got everything near lines here, and we pay the consequences for it, for a storm. So you know, you just drive down the roads, and there's so many trees that as soon as we get some heavy snow, they're over those lines. And there's even trees across the street that are leaning over the road to go over the line. So I think if the committee could consider, you know, how could we address the power aspect of it? And yes, CMP is the one that goes in there and does the tree trimming. But if the town would allow, to David's point, if the town would allow residents to use power lines as a consideration and not require them to go in and plant another tree right where where it's going to grow over a power line again. I think
So that's something that you can talk to Galen about and come back.
Yeah, if that's something that the board is interested in, we certainly can workshop that a little bit.
I didn't know if the rest of the board.
No, I would agree with that. That'd be important to do. So they'll take it away as an action.
Sure. Any more questions on the hazard tree section specifically?
I'll make one more statement and then I'll end, stop. I struggle with private property and specifically the balance between trees and domiciles and people's homes. So I want to make sure that, you know, we allow people to safeguard their homes from dead limbs or trees that are, you know, arching over. And I don't think we do that. You know, I think we've got a little too many handcuffs on our residents. So when I'm reading through this, that's the lens I'm using it. And so I personally have an issue with this, the hazardous, with the trees, the replanting, because we have so many sites where it just doesn't make sense to have trees, because if they go to their full growth, they are going to cause troubles. And there's, you know, jokingly, I said to Lori and Alan earlier, I would be okay with this if we had an ordinance, a line item in here that said if a tree falls on a private citizen house, the town's going to pay for all the damage. So we've got to, again, I'm looking to find that balance, you know, between, obviously, we don't want to clear cut the town by any means, but at the same time, we've got a lot of dead wood here, literally in all our forests and on our properties. So, thank you.
Sure. Also, you know, worth looking into. I do think that the hazard tree removal section specifically does, it does not necessarily, I think that, and I may be misremembering what's written here, and I can certainly come back to that. I believe that if the canopy that's cleared from the removal of the hazard tree is less than 50 feet, then replanting isn't necessary. So we do, I mean, we also care about our residents and the safety of their homes.
Right,
so.
yeah. By no means did I mean to, you know, infer
certainly,
that.
but yes, it's definitely, like, we can take a look and make sure that there are certainly ways for people. We don't want, you know,
Yeah, I
roots
think if we can just give it within, so all I'm asking is if we can use the lens of giving residents a little bit more leniency so that they can make the right decision with the code officer to allow them to not run into a situation where they're going to have something crash through their house. That's all.
Sure, absolutely.
That's all.
So we have the next couple of sections, we have some exemptions to clearing and vegetation removal. So this allows for exemptions in cases, for example, in cases of emergencies, and just a couple other exemptions as well. Does anybody have any questions specifically about this section?
No.
Okay. And then revegetation requirements. This, again, all these sections have been lifted from Chapter 1000. We do currently have revegetation requirements, and our code enforcement officers do follow up with people. We require a replanting plan and photographic evidence, and they do go out and check on that. So this revegetation requirement section is pulling from Chapter 1000, but it certainly is not new to our ordinance and practice that we currently have in our office.
Yeah, and I think on that, in terms of the replanting and revegetation, you know, on the shoreline, like it says in here, we don't want the roots of the trees dug up. You don't want to do that. So then we're talking about planting on top of root systems of large trees. So again, we have to, I'm just looking for the town to give a little bit lower leadway to make sure that, you know, residents are able to make the right decision and we don't get into a situation where we have a tree that grows tall and has no ability to have put roots in, because, you know, we had four huge trees that got taken down, and it's a very tiny space that you're trying to replant. So I think we just need, again, you're hearing the same thing from me.
Put in some safeties for people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's the reason to leave the roots in the ground? Is to
Stabilization.
It stabilizes the ground, but you can't plant, it's very tough to plant another tree
on
when
top
there's a
of the
root.
Right, I agree.
I've done it, don't work.
It don't work.
So I think that's, you know, that's why I want some of the, I understand it's lifted from the state, but I think we have the ability to put some.
We can certainly personalize a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say common sense, but I think that's a little too harsh from the state.
Yeah, that's definitely, I mean, we certainly would like to protect our homeowners as well, so we can work through that a little bit and come up with language that works for everybody.
Yep, thank you.
So our next section is townwide regulations. This one is allowing exterior stairs for access and egress to the first floor to be exempt from setbacks, from the setback requirements that people have. This is a need that we're seeing in when people are raising their homes to be in accordance with the floodplain ordinance. When they raise their home, they suddenly can't make long enough stairs to actually access the house because it encroaches on the setbacks. So this is allowing, the stairs would still have to be within their lot line, but does allow them to go within the setbacks with those access and egress stairs.
That's common sense.
Yep.
Yep, and it's something that we're seeing a lot of. People are going to be raising their homes more and more, and so it's something that if we can get ahead of a little bit and allow our residents that comfort and low stress or lower their stress of a situation. So the next section is nonconformance and vested rights. This is similar. This is just allowing stairs to not stairs for access and egress to not be counted as part of lot coverage and footprint calculations. So a similar issue. A lot of the people that are raising their homes are doing so on non-conforming lots, which means that they're already over the allowed lot coverage, and so when they raise their house, they have to find something to take away in order to put those stairs that they now need because their house is higher out farther. So this is allowing them to do that as well without being counted towards lot coverage.
Are you gonna put in any estimate for the width of the
Yes,
lot?
basically
So
it'll
that
be,
they're not, you know.
yeah, it basically will be minimal code requirements. So no crazy stairs that go all over the place, just minimal required by code stairs to get into your house.
So I just want to make, so if this all gets adopted and that's included, at the planning board meetings, we don't have to go round and round over this situation you're just talking about, where they're trying to remove driveways or taking walks out down in Goose Rock
Yes.
Beach. So,
And
which needs to happen, so.
Yes, and the planning board has already agreed to give the code enforcement office jurisdiction over houses that are being raised on the same exact footprint as they existed before. If the house needs to be moved at all to be reconfigured with the lot, they still have to go to planning board. But if it's coming straight up, nothing else is changing, it just goes right to code anyway. So, shouldn't be too much additional time spent on stairs. Any more questions about that section? So our next section is dealing with planning board site plan review. So currently, we don't really have an option for people to amend a site plan. They just have to come in front of planning board and present an entirely new site plan. We allow subdivisions to be amended. We can do major or minor revisions. And so this is kind of giving the same option to people that do site plans. So a site plan review would be something like if someone needs to move their house in order to raise it, they come for a site plan review. It's not as big as a subdivision, but it does still need to go to planning board. So this is just allowing people to amend those site plan applications if they've already been approved. Any questions on this?
No.
No, thank you.
And then the last one is just a table at the end of the ordinance, removing the 1 per lot requirement from the single-family dwelling setback language. This is something that was meant to be removed in the LD 2003 changes and wasn't. So we're just removing that and cleaning that up. It's nothing new. It should have been removed before. And that's everything for land use.
Will these all be separate votes on
Yeah, will these be separate,
on the
like?
warrant? How is that gonna work, Lori?
I would say that's always a board decision, but we would recommend all the land use ordinances together.
Together?
Yep,
Okay.
that's how we normally would do it. Amendments to the land use ordinance and then we,
Boom.
Okay.
otherwise we'd have a lot of votes.
A lot of different votes,
Yes. Any further questions about land use? All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I see you have an issue.
What's it? Yeah. Yeah. I might have to see, I'll have to see what the land use comes back as.
So tree ordinance?
Tree ordinance?
Yep. Hi. Good, thank you, John.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey, John.
Good to see you. Good evening. For the last year or so, the Shade Tree Committee has worked on a tree ordinance. And the main impetus for that is much of what has been discussed tonight. Is we see a lot of flooding, see a lot of soil erosion, we see banks that are not that need to certainly be preserved in order for there not to be runoff into waters, bringing in polluting elements as well, ending up in streams and rivers, and ultimately in the, maybe along Goose Creeks, Goose Rocks, or out beyond the Kennebunkport River into the ocean, the bays and the harbors. It's a critical part of a tree ordinance is a critical part, in our view, of any plan to develop resilience to climate change. And studies have shown time and time again that trees are essential for maintaining the quality of the soil, for ensuring that runoff is managed more effectively, that it can be managed more effectively. It's not going to solve everything, but getting rid of trees, losing trees will definitely be a huge problem. The USDA Forest Service estimates that a medium-sized tree will take up or intercept and absorb actually 2,380 gallons of water in a year. The city of Palo Alto, California, did a report in which they estimated, again, I don't know how much of it was pure calculation, but it was estimated after study that they were able to intercept 135 million gallons of rainwater in 1 year. It's clear that that trees are extremely important in terms of retaining the quality, character, integrity of the soil, and ensuring that we have a healthy ecosystem here, which can only be important, can only be vital to to responding to climate change. Now, I was hoping that just before we got into questions, that I might be able to read the couple of paragraphs in the preamble, which I think for people at home and maybe for the people here in attendance, they have some idea as to the breadth of what we were considering when we wrote this tree ordinance. So with your permission,
Yep.
I'll go ahead and do that. Thank you. The tree ordinance has been created by the Kennebunk Shade Tree Committee. The tree canopy of the town of Kennebunkport is a valuable resource that is critical for the well-being of town residents. Trees mitigate the effects of climate change, improve air quality, provide habitat for wildlife, and improve physical and mental health. The preservation of the tree canopy and the planting of replacement trees are key to enhancing the quality of life in the environment of the town. Protecting public health against climate change impacts such as heat, drought, and flooding, conserving the character of wooded and natural areas, reducing energy consumption, safeguarding air quality, baffling noise, saving wildlife habitat, reducing topsoil erosion, securing and increasing property values, and preserving the unique character of the town. The tree ordinance delineates the policies and plans for the town of Kennebunkport, hereby referred to as the town, with regards to the planting, care, and removal of municipal trees, tag trees, and trees on private property. It is designed to encourage sound environmental and cultural practices. Now, I've already mentioned how important it is and how critical it is to responding to in building resiliency in a time of climate change. There's also a lot of other, we might say ancillary or other effects that are important to take into consideration. It's calculated that the reports have shown that a neighborhood with tree lined, well tree lined, the values of the houses are 25% higher than they are in neighborhoods where there are no trees. So clearly, the character, the value of housing, the character of the community, both historically, culturally, and economically, is really a part of our preservation, our maintenance of the tree canopy. The health of that tree canopy is much more than simply an ecological question. It is also a question of economics and historical significance of the town itself. And so any questions you may have, I'll try to answer them, respond to them. I don't know that I can answer them, but I might be able to respond to them.
Well, I'll start. So my question, everything you read, I agree with. I love planting trees. I love to maintain trees. But my concern in reading this ordinance is the word private property. I have no problem with the Shade Committee looking at the tag trees in town. I have no problem with the Shade Committee looking at municipal trees or being responsible for those, or however you want to kind of manage that. But the word in here is private property. So my question to you is this ordinance potentially going to impact every private property owner in this town when it comes to maintaining trees on their property?
Yes.
So I have a problem with that.
Okay.
Because I also know in here that you've got fines of $1,000 and $5,000, unacceptable. And it's also, you have a 15-inch diameter at 4 feet. I went out on my property today and measured my trees. You basically are telling me I cannot take trees down on my property unless the Shade Tree Committee gives me permission to do
Or
that.
unless the tree warden of the
But I
Public
don't
Works.
find that appropriate, because to what was talked about earlier here, I fully support what you said earlier. I think we should plant trees. I think we should maintain trees. But if you drive up Beechwood Ave, a lot of those trees need to be dealt with. So if the Shade Tree Committee wants to come out and start cutting some of the dead wood that's falling in the street, I have no problem with that. But if I want to maintain my property to my liking, getting rid of the dead wood, getting rid of the raising the canopy so I can actually see across my property on 3 acres, I have a right to do that without having the tree warden come and tell me if I can take a tree down. Or I don't want it to fall on my garage, or on my propane tank, or on my shed, or on my car, or on my dog, or on my kids, or whoever. Or I just don't want trees all over my property anymore. I want a healthy yard, not a cluttered yard with dead wood falling all over the place. We can look at what's going on in California. Maybe if they maintain those yards and those forests, we wouldn't be seeing what we're seeing. So I have a problem with this ordinance. So if you are now telling this board and the people of this town that you want to control every tree on their property, or fine them $1,000 or $5,000 without coming to get some unelected person's opinion, I think this is going down. That's just my opinion. I'll let anyone else want to talk about it.
Well, we're not just coming to get some unelected person's opinion.
You asked in here that you said that the Shade Tree Committee would be the controlling body over this ordinance. That means no one in town has any ability to even challenge you if this passed, correct?
That is correct as
Correct.
it's stated, but one of the things
An
that we...
ordinance never goes back, it always goes forward. So this ordinance, as you propose it, is way too stringent and draconian on the people of the town of Kennebunkport to manage their own property, in my opinion.
Okay, I respect your opinion, but certainly the Shade Tree Committee can make changes in the ordinance. It's a proposed ordinance, and we've come here to speak to you.
Which would mean that you would have to bring it to the board would have to decide whether it was good or not, and then the voters would have to decide. So
Exactly.
once you get what you want, you might not come back, correct?
Please explain that a little bit more.
If you get the ordinance passed, what's going to prevent you from coming back to loosen it up if people start complaining? What's going to force you to come back?
We hope to achieve an ordinance that is acceptable to the select board.
Well, I think what you're hearing, at least from this select board member, is as you have admitted, you will control all the trees on my 3 acres is not going to pass with my vote.
So I think
We wouldn't control all the trees on your 3 acres.
You just told me that I would have to get permission.
Those that are 15-inch.
Yeah, and I measured them, and it
DVH.
is ridiculous. It is this big. That's how big 15-inch circumference is. Those are not mature, full oak trees.
If we do not put some restrictions on private property, the disposition of trees on private property, how are we to ensure that we have a healthy town tree canopy?
You can actually, you know what? Sometimes having
How can
healthy
that be?
woods and healthy forests is getting rid of some of the trees.
That's true.
Right. So I don't need to ask my permission to maintain my own property, to maintain a healthy balance on my property.
So, John,
Well,
I think part of this is, so if I go back through, so I went back through and started with, where you guys, the Shade Tree Commission, and I went back to, I go to my historian on the board, Alan, and got some history from him and also from Lori. So I went on your site, on the site on the town, and I think that's where people should go, because I learned about the American chestnut, the Asian longhorn beetle. And so when I looked at the actual function of the Shade Tree Committee, from when it was formed, it was to maintain inventory of our tag trees, it was to publicize and educate, it was to monitor the elm tree health, and then, notify citizens to make sure that we didn't wipe out our whole elm tree population. It was to recommend replacement of trees. It was to participate in Arbor Day. So, I'm sort of, I'm with David on this, because for me, so your last comment about, well, how are we going to protect all the trees here? To me, that is a statement from how I interpreted that, is that we don't trust our residents. And I can't take that leap. So from my perspective, it's, the best way, and I've had conversations about this for various things for people in the town that have very strong opinions about something. And for me, the best way is to educate and to inform people about the value, just like you started in the preamble, about what does a tree canopy do. But I am a private property rights person, and when I read your ordinance, you jumped from a maintenance, doing good work for the public property that we have in town, and make sure that we are educating and monitoring and recommending, to a imposing review board and fining. And that was too far of a jump for me. I think I'm on the education bandwagon. I trust residents to do what they can. But I also am wondering, and I talked about this with my husband and actually with Alan too, just as David brought up the wildfires, we're not maintaining our forests here. We have a lot of forest with dead wood, so I'm just, and we just went through, I was going to talk with Chief about this, because I was wondering, how dry our ground is right now. We had a horrible dry summer. We've gone into a no snow winter. Do we repeat 47? You drive down and you see dead wood, dead wood, dead wood. So I want to allow the public to maintain their properties, as John has said, as they see fit. Education of stuff is for me the benefit here, and that's what I think. That's where I think the Shade Tree Committee should be, really helping the town educate the community on what they should keep, what they shouldn't keep, and how best to grow trees.
With all due respect, that's what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is provide some leadership, in a sense, to understanding beyond an individual's property, that there's a larger question here. And the question has to do with the viability of the canopy in town and its relationship to any kind of building of resiliency to climate change. I don't think that...
Let's go
No,
down the line.
it's-
Let's go down.
Okay.
I totally support that piece, John. I think that really should be absolutely the focus, to educate folks, citizens, on the importance of the tree cover. What it provides is super. And to have control of anything that's on public property and right-of-ways is our town responsibility, and the responsibility of the Shade Tree Committee. But I do echo my colleagues' concerns about private property and providing an enforcement to the point of leveling fines on private property. I think that is a step beyond, as Mary Beth has pointed out, what was outlined as the charter and the intent of this committee. So I too find myself not able to support this as it's presented. My concerns, if we want to go back and look at this in terms of trying to react constructively, is the inference of control on private property, and the enforcement, trying to levy fines to private citizens on what they do on their own property. I think that's really problematic. In terms of the elms and the chestnuts and the excellent work you do to preserve those historic and important species, it's critical stuff. And I applaud what you're doing there. But this is a step too far for me as I read it.
Okay, well, in response to that, I think that, you know, when you look at the town website and you see what the Shade Tree Committee's goals and policies are, so to speak, you know, that is not something that needs to be written in stone. There is in there the opportunity for us to be able to move forward and to come up with other strategies to be able to deal with preserving the health of the town canopy. It should not be a situation where we assume that what is written there is all that we can do in the future. I'm not saying what we are doing now, but what we might be able to do, what we propose to do, is something I don't think really does go beyond the spirit of trying to maintain and preserve the canopy in the town, the tree canopy.
Well, and I can, this is something that actually is going to come up later in our meeting when we talk a little bit about the town committees and subcommittees. And I think it's important that if a committee wishes to expand their mission, their role, that they have an opportunity to get buy-in from the town. And we're going to try to put that in place. So this is something that, you know, we can talk about in terms of the role of the shade tree and the kind of things you'd like to do, and we can discuss how that would evolve. So, you know, again, I'm not saying I'm against an ordinance. I am uncomfortable with supporting the elements that are dealing with private property and what I think is an incursion on private property rights.
I will say that there are other towns that have done this and done it successfully. Newton, Massachusetts, for example, has a much stricter tree ordinance, and their fines are much more severe than what we're suggesting here. We're not saying that these fines have to remain at this level.
No.
We're just simply saying it is difficult to enforce, you know, a tree ordinance of this nature without some enforcement. Some enforcement
But I think, you know, we're a little farther north than Newton, Massachusetts, and the Yankee blood runs a little strong here. And I think the private property issue is going to be a concern. It certainly is to me.
Sheila, you have something?
I was going to say, I think you should change this to suggestions or recommendations as far as private property. But you do not have the authority to go onto somebody's property and do at your will what you want.
We're not asking to get that authority. We're asking for the board to consider that as the possibility of what we can do.
That's what we're saying. We don't want you going on people's private property because you feel a tree should be there or shouldn't be there. This is private property.
Yes, but it's not the intention of the Shade Tree Committee to manage this entire thing.
But that's what it sounds.
I know, there is a statement in
language
this.
has to be changed.
Yes, that I agree with, and we're prepared to work through that.
Yeah.
For example, there's one.
This as it is.
Right, but there is one statement that suggests that, not suggests, but states that the Shade Tree Committee would manage or oversee this, which suggests that we would be the one enforcing it. That's not going to be the role of the Shade Tree Committee. Yeah, I agree that we need to take a look at it.
The original, I'm not on the ordinance land. I stay with the policy. I've read the policy. The policy's good. The policy gives, you know, you have you have the ability for a private citizen to sign an easement deed, which goes and attaches, which then you have an agreement. So I'm not on the, I can't go from this to something else. I'm actually good right here. And I would like more education of the public, more awareness, but I'm good with the policy. I don't want to expand rights beyond the policy.
So I'm agreeable with the board. I think that we have the tree policy, and I think it's very adequate, and I think that we need to keep it that way. I don't want anybody coming on my property and telling me I can't cut a tree down. And I am quite sure there's a lot of people that feel the same way this whole board does. So I would like to keep what we have, and that would be good, that'd be good for me.
Yeah, if I could just respond to that. The intention is not to go on and to say to people willy-nilly, you can't cut that tree.
We know your
The point,
intention is good. We know your intentions are good. What we're saying is you can't go on private property and do at will what you want. Take out the private property thing.
well, then,
I would take-
and then you would take the greatest percentage of the trees in the town out,
That,
you know?
go back,
You have to,
go back to the,
Education.
Education and easement.
yes.
I know that I started this off.
Very mild.
But just,
Very
yeah,
mild.
mildly, I kind of set the bar.
It didn't seem to be
yeah.
like one way or
Well,
another.
I mean, I think to what the board is saying is, I applaud the Shade Tree Committee. I applaud everything you do in terms of maintaining the trees, the tagging the trees. So don't take it that way. I think what you have to take from what I'm saying, what the other board members are saying is, the way this read was almost, it was in your face, this is what's going to happen. As someone who just had someone removing trees from his property last week, I looked at this and went, are you kidding me? Like, I have no intention of ruining the canopy, legacy trees, I mean, I'm all for what you're trying to do and educate people and find different trees. I think you've got a problem with this language. That's why I'm kind of very strongly said it's not going anywhere. And if you want to rework it and come back and think about it, it's fine. But I do think that you should focus on the education piece, because I think that you all serve a very valuable resource and mission for this town, which is to keep trees, keep them healthy, keep healthy woodlands, keep healthy forests. I just think that people are going to have a problem, given especially the 15-inch diameter. When I went out and measured it, that's not a big tree.
yeah, if I just may say there in response to that, I don't mean to drag this out, but the point is that having the ability to be able to get approval of the cutting of a 15-inch tree is not intended to go out and say you can't cut it. It's intended for us to be able to maintain some ideas to what is going on and what trees what trees we may be able to replace that with, so that we retain
that
the vitality
exists right
of
now.
it.
So as a resident, I can say, hey, I gotta cut these trees down. They're all like killing each other. And I know that I can go to the Shade Tree Committee and say, what native trees, should I plant in this area? And I know I have a resource in the town, and I think that's a good thing. And like David and everybody else has said, that is an excellent thing that our town has. And I have been on the site and I've learned things. But also you have to understand that from the board's perspective, we look at these things from a legality standpoint too. So when I read it, I played it forward. We have a person, a tree warden, yourself, and then we have the Shade Tree Committee. A private resident says, I'm gonna take this tree down. It looks like it's dead. It's leaning over my house. And you guys say, nope, it's looking pretty good. This is a great canopy. You can't touch it. Sunny day, no wind. Somebody sleeping inside, taking a nap. Tree falls down and kills them. We can't put our town in that situation where we are walking on private property. We have no legal jurisdiction. We can't put the town assets at risk. We have to let the private homeowner make decisions as they see fit. We can educate them, we can help them, but we cannot enforce or step over private property's rights. And I think that's really the basis there.
One example I might provide right now, without being specific as to the location or anything like that, there is a corner in the village where there's a really very significantly very large tree, a linden tree, and it's in a neighborhood where it's quite leafy And that tree is really, really important in terms of the character of that particular street. The resident is now asking for that tree to be removed because they're doing renovations to their house. And the company that is doing the reservations has recommended to them, not recommended to them, told them that it would be better for them to remove that tree in order for them to do the work. So they're asking that the tree be removed. That tree is, the retention of water in that tree, it's going to flood that area right there, right in that intersection. It's going to really degrade the quality of that street in terms of its character. And the question is, do we have any leg to stand on at this point to go in and to actually put some measures in play to actually go to the person and say, look, we need reconsideration of this, you know, and these are the reasons why we need to reconsider it. It's the species, you know, it has to do with diversity, biological diversity, biological diversity, species diversity. It has to do with erosion. It has to do with flooding, all of things which will cost the town money, will fall back on the town.
So what do you say to the person that all of a sudden the tree is dying and it falls on their house and kills somebody inside the house?
It's not dying. It's a healthy tree. It's a very healthy tree.
What would you do if the person had asked, I'm just saying, the person asked, you said no, and a storm comes and knocks the tree down, and they said, I asked for 3 times and I get 3 no's. I think you know where the board is on that. I don't want to drag this out any longer.
Yeah.
You guys do a great job.
You do a great job. It's not.
You have to, if you just stick with what you have, that's a lot. That's an awful lot for the town. It's good for the town, what we have. I really feel that way.
And to John's point, when we have these committees come in front of the board and explain why that may be the time to actually come and have the conversation too.
Yeah, it's a tough one, John. There's no one answer that is correct all the way around. I know I resonate with your concerns and your logic. That's an unfortunate case, but it doesn't sway my opinion that we shouldn't be, as a town, telling folks what they can do with their trees on their property. I would hope we could educate that person, let them know what the cost would be to the environment, to the town. I mean, but there's just too many other downsides if we were to try to put regulations in to control it that way.
We have somebody with a hand raised.
Yeah.
Do we still have somebody with a hand raised?
Nina, you can speak.
Hello?
Hi.
Can you hear?
Hi, Nina.
Hi, this is Nina Perlmutter. I'm chair of the Planning Board Committee. I'm also a member of the Shade Tree Committee. And I would ask you to consider that we regulate things on private property all the time. This is just another way of regulation. And I would also point out that the state regulates trees on private property in shoreland zoning because you cannot take down 40% of the trees on your property in shoreland zoning without replacing them. And, you know, we asked for permission to do that. You've just seen that. Basically, we're going through land use ordinance changes. With subdivisions, we ask them to identify large trees whenever a subdivision goes in to see what they're doing with the trees on private property. We regulate private property all the time. We tell private property owners what they can do and can't do in zoning districts all the time, how they can build their house. There are towns that tell them what color they can build their house, what kind of shingles they can build their house. So basically, a town does have authority to go into private property for the benefit of the town. And the tree canopy of a town is for the benefit of the town. It shades streets. It's not just the trees that are the municipal trees that shade the streets and keep the town cool in summer. And as John pointed out, they're extremely important in preventing flooding issues. I've seen, and John's seen, and the committee members have seen a lot of new residents who don't understand this. And I want to point out that John has done an absolutely fantastic job of going out and trying to educate people. Sometimes he takes Noah from Bartlett with him to examine a tree and tell private property owners how the tree is doing and whether it should come down or not. He doesn't always work on his own. We care a lot about the trees on private property where we have easements signed with them so that we can maintain them. You know, half of the residents of this town don't live here year-round, and we're getting more and more people coming in from urban environments who understand nothing about trees and what they do. And it takes time to educate them. And what we would rather do is educate them and have them understand. But sometimes they just come in and they cut trees down that shouldn't be cut down, that are important to the neighborhood. So that's one of the things we were trying to do with this ordinance. If you find there's too much legal liability, yes, you can vote it down. But I can tell you right now that if you're going to be a town with a good tree canopy with resilience, you need to have something that governs trees on private property. This might not be the best ordinance to do it, but, and you might have to extend the authority of the tree warden or the code enforcement officer or something like that. But in the long run, you're a coastal town with flooding, and those trees are extremely important to that. And for that reason, I think you have the authority to do some regulation on private property. We already do it with vegetation, and we ask people and regulate people in terms of putting in native vegetation. You know, so we're working to educate as fast as we can. And the Shade Tree Committee is only about 4 people, and they work very hard at trying to keep our municipal trees growing. But there really will have to be in the future some way of dealing with the trees on private property. And that's a lot of trees. That's thousands and thousands of trees, I grant you. And some people have woodlots where they have to, where they need to manage them. Some of them are in tree growth, state tree growth under those laws and things. I know what it's like. I have a property with 32 acres that was just managed and inspected by a forester. And I'm willing to do that, but I understand what it takes to maintain trees and to keep an environment healthy, a microenvironment. So that's my take on that.
That's your choice. You own the property. You can do anything you want. You can have a tree warden come in. You can do anything you want with your property. And I want to do what I want with my property. And I think a lot of other people do.
Well, with regard to trees, I can. But with regard to what I can build there, I can't. With I can do because and
you're breaking up.
Yeah, it's something on our end, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yep. But thank you, Nina, we got the majority of that. Thank you.
Okay.
So,
any more hands up?
no.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
Let's see. 11, update on short-term rental lease licensing. Hello again.
Hello again. So I just want to give you guys a very brief update. So we've wrapped up our short-term rental licensing period for 2024. We ended on December 31st. was actually a very successful year for us. I think that we had some nervousness going into this cycle with our new program, very different from the old one. But I just wanted to share with the board that we actually had the fewest non-renewals this year of any year that we've been doing the short-term rental licensing. So overall, a success. I think that staff did a good job of communicating with the public, and overall, we had a very successful application cycle.
Well, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you for the update.
Yeah, of course. Do you have any specific questions or anything you'd like to hear about?
We're all set.
Do you want to just talk about how many people
many-
are on the waiting list?
How many are on the
Yeah.
waiting list? Yeah.
So we have 55 people on the wait list currently, which is about 20 more than we went into the cycle
Just
with.
quick, the 55, how many of them were on, same people were on wait list last year? Did anyone, there's still people kind of sitting on the wait list for a year or two now?
We haven't started giving to the wait list.
Correct. I haven't started
but-
issuing new licenses. So we had about 20 new applications, so just around 35 people were on the wait list last year as well.
Okay.
And that's consistent with what we see. We usually, when people come in, they ask us all the time how long they can expect to be on the wait list. We usually tell them 1 to 2 years is expected.
Okay.
So some are 2 years, some are going into their second year.
Yes.
Top of the list, but
They just didn't make the cut.
Yes. And it's possible that we'll have people on the wait list at the end of this year that were also on it last year. So 1 to 2 years is, like I said, what we tell people. It's hard to predict what the turnover rate will be in short-term rental licenses, but 15 to 30 is kind of the range that we've been seeing.
For the future, just, that would be great to know if you could just kind of keep track of that as we progress through this for over a couple of years.
Certainly.
Other than that, no.
Thank
Good job.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks.
So, does anybody want a 5-minute break, or do you want to keep going on?
Let's keep going.
Okay, just
Keep going.
making sure.
Keep going.
Wow.
Okay.
Sheila's tough. Okay,
She wants out. She wants out.
let's roll through it.
Okay, 12, discussion of waste tipping contract.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Eric's coming up to the podium. And so we put in your packet the same information that you had at your December meeting. Eric and I had the opportunity to meet with Kevin Roche of Eco Maine on Monday. So I gave you a memo that tried to answer the questions regarding Eco Maine. I also have been able to secure some agreements and contracts. I'm gonna ask Yanina I have them separated. There's 3 agreements each. So one of the things that Kevin explained is if we did want to join, we would need to have the interlocal agreement, which basically says we're joining with all the other communities. We would need a waste handling agreement, and so that's about how we're going to work individually with Eco Maine for them to handle our waste. And then there are bylaws. And so there is a joinder agreement, which would be specific to us, and it would lay out, what our equity buy-in position is, and we would have to negotiate that. So these agreements I'm passing out are just sample agreements. They're quite old, 2005, 2006. So some of these agreements back when they were established and Eco Maine was established, dealt with flow control. So you would have had to have a flow control ordinance saying all trash within your community has to go to this facility. And it was a way to make sure those facilities had enough trash to generate. And that would require even commercial entities to go to that facility. What Kevin explained to us is they would not require that of us now, and there would be some other changes. So this gives you an idea of what the agreements might look like and what kind of subject area, but they should not be taken as the gospel of what our agreement would be looking like. He said he does have their attorney, Mark Bauer. Remember Mark Bauer came with us?
Wow.
Yep, so Mark Bauer's their attorney, and he's asked them to work on agreements, draft agreements to give to the community, so you could see what that looked like. Do you have anything to add, Eric?
Not really. I know there's a lot of questions around liability and those types of things. And I think Lori's put together, tried to answer all those questions the best. We did bring those questions forward to the general manager there, and hopefully those questions have been answered.
No,
Go ahead. Bob.
No, I don't, I mean, I think this will be good to look at. I mean, I know we have until the end of the month to make the decision. And I appreciate the questions and EcoMain's getting back to us with the answers and you sharing them with us. I am leaning towards EcoMain, and I think that probably is the best option we have. I can make a decision tonight if people want to, or I can wait till 2 weeks from now if people want to mull it over. But that, I just want to, I kind of like the whole idea where the trash will be taken, the recycling will be taken and turned into energy. And I like the fact that the costs are kind of locked in for a longer period versus Casella, which will be back renegotiating in 5 years.
So I'm leaning towards, so I'm in the EcoMain bucket. I'm not in the Casella for the reasons that David just brought up. I like the ability to burn the trash and not do landfill. I think that all sounded really good. I like the ability of having a longer contract, like Alan has brought up and before. Where I am at, though, in terms of everything I've read so far still, is I'm at the EcoMain contract, not a member. And the reason why I'm there right now is I can't find the benefit for being to buy in, right? So I ran some numbers just on, I know you guys said, look at, we're giving you a spreadsheet and, you know, you're thumbnailing or you're swinging some numbers. So I just sort of ran some numbers through to say, okay, 5 years, 10 years, you know, what's the payback on our buy-in? And it wasn't like an astounding, we're not saving an astounding amount of money to buy in for me that overtakes the risk of buying into something. And I say that because, and thank you for answering all the questions that we had and the write-up from Lori and yourself. So when I read it through, it says, okay, we get a seat at the board, but basically we don't get a voice, right? So
very small.
Portland has 18%. So the way it's laid out right now, if I'm understanding it, or if I'm understanding it correctly, you know, there's 20 towns that have bought in, and then there's 54 that are contracts.
That's correct, yes.
So, and then it's the one who has the most garbage wins in terms of seated board. So Portland right now has 18% of the vote. And so that leaves 19 other towns. And if you just said, okay, they all have the same amount of garbage, they'd get 4% vote each, roughly right. If you have somebody that has like enough to get a 7% vote or 8% vote, and then you've got Portland and somebody else that are your number two people that are going to make decisions for all the other towns. So I don't like being a small fish at a table, especially if I'm giving money from the town's perspective. And so I couldn't get over that hump. I like EcoMain for everything that, you know, we've talked about here. But I'm of the side right now to just do a 25-year contract with.
So we wouldn't be offered a 25-year contract as a contract?
Because that's what it.
No, that's the price if we had that.
Oh, no, I thought that's where I read. I thought I read a 25-year contract in here.
We talked about a 25, it's really a 30-year if, for the equity buy-in. But as a contract, you could do a 1-year contract, you could do a 3-year contract, a 5-year contract, maybe a 10-year contract. It depends what EcoMain is willing to sign.
Okay.
But it wouldn't be for that length of time. So I guess that's one of the things that I see as an owner, is that it is the only long-term solution, because we'll be back at the table. So I don't know what EcoMain would offer for a contract, you know, we would have to
I think that's something we need to find out.
Yeah.
But the other piece, and I appreciate we would be a small voice, but at least we'd be a voice.
No, we want to be a
If
voice.
we are at the table, if we are a contractor, if we don't become an owner we're gonna get whatever Portland decides anyway, because that's what they're gonna decide to do. So we're gonna be in a choice of, do we go there, do we go back to Casella? We're back in this whole mess again. At least, yes, it's a small voice, but they're there to hear our opinions, and we're at the table. I think there's a real advantage to ownership. And I don't believe that the downsides outweigh that advantage in my thinking. So again, I'm all for Eco Maine. I'm subtly in that camp, but I'd like to have some voice than absolutely no voice, because they are going to be the people, I feel, that we're going to be dealing with long-term.
So, I mean, we would have probably 2 to 3% of a voice, if you will, if you put it in those perspectives.
Well,
Yes, absolutely. In Portland,
If we're just a contract, we're not at the table at all.
But yeah, so I think this is where you and I are on the opposite side. I'm at the table at a 2% voice. I don't got diddly for a voice. And I don't want to pay money for that non-voice. I want to, but yes, you have to pay money to buy in.
Yeah,
And
but you're getting the reduced rate. We're paying less money over time. That you're still paying not a lot less.
No,
but
you're not paying a lot less.
But you're paying less.
But
You're not paying more.
Right, and then the other part of it is, what do we actually, as a town, I don't want to own a power plant. I don't want to own a landfill. I don't want, so if you said, what are the two least regulated things? What scares you regulation-wise? Landfills and power plants. I don't want to put for me, I see no value of putting the town in those crosshairs. I just want a contract. Can we get a 10-year contract with them?
No. Maybe we could.
Well, Lori's.
We would have to ask.
yeah, so just to address, so you're absolutely right, the landfill regulations and such are a concern for all of us. We deal with it on the biosolids side as well, because we got landfill that as well, and the distances we have to travel, however, are incredibly far. So Waste Management is hauling, it's costing us a lot of money, because they're having to travel at least multiple hours to get to their landfills. And what will happen to those landfills long-term, we don't know. One of the things we do know about Eco Maine is their landfill is within 2.5 miles of Eco Maine. They have a 20-year license on that and expandable capacity.
Yeah, I'm for Eco Maine.
Yeah.
I just don't want to buy in. I don't want to own part of that.
Yeah.
I don't want the town, or me personally, or me as a town resident, to own part of Eco Maine.
Okay.
I don't, so you're asking somebody that used to do mergers and acquisitions to make a decision in a short period of time, and I'm having trouble personally making the trip, because I haven't sat down and looked at it and understand all the risks of what does it mean for a town to own this. I have to go back through and read, it's how I'm made up.
Yeah.
Right? I'd have to read the legal documents. I'd have to, I'd have to understand stuff, because how I feel right now, I guess I'm up in the shade tree thing, so I got to bring it down a notch. But how I feel right now is, I'm not comfortable. I'd rather do a long-term contract if it's available with Eco Maine. Everything everybody's talked about with Eco Maine, I'm very impressed with them. I love it. It's great. But I don't want to own them.
So one thing.
Different levels of risk averse, that's all.
So one thing Kevin did offer while we were there is to take a tour of the facility or go there and meet. I said I would rather, talk to the board and see if anybody's interested. If you are, we can set up a time.
I've been twice, and I want to go back a third time.
Oh,
I'm really fascinated.
Are we getting on the rec bus and going as a whole group?
I would just have us meet there.
Is it,
No party?
is it the smell you like, or?
It's wonderful.
That's just wonderful.
No, I think Laurie, I think it would be great to see it. I do think it would be great to see it, and I'm in the middle right now. I mean, I get the buy-in, let's say 2-3%. I get it's like being in a condo, you have a certain percentage based on, but you can also group up with everyone else's in 2 and 3% and overrule Portland to some extent. So you are at the table, but it might be helpful to see it also.
Interestingly,
Well, you
Portland
have-
sends
you're
4
gonna have a lot
members
of
for
people
their 18%.
that have to.
I'm
at
sorry,
the table,
Alan, just how many members are on their board?
Besides just us.
Well, there's 20 right now.
Most communities will provide 1 member. The city of Portland actually chooses to send 4 members So they actually split, interestingly enough, they choose to split their votes from the board to the board.
But there's that whole part too that, and again, I appreciate this conversation and we are having good conversations tonight amongst the board members. But it is still that I go back and so if we're doing due diligence right now, what's in my mind is the school contract that I so dearly would love to get out. And I sort of in a way, because I'm not feeling like for me personally, being able to do the due diligence to buy into something, I'm feeling school contract-ish. I don't know what's behind the curtain. I don't know what I don't know what we're signing the town up for.
And I'm sure we can get a draft contract and the details, absolutely the details, the devil's in the details. However, we were told by the general manager that this is based on tonnage, period. So this is a tipping fee based on tonnage. You bring X amount of tons, you're not required to bring your whole community. You can do whatever you deliver there. It's based, that's your number.
No, I'm talking about the liability of owning into a company, having the town own into a company.
I was going to the evaluation piece of the school discussion that you were having, and it's really, that's where my brain went. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, it's just, okay. So at the evaluation of the school, we don't have a say at the table, literally.
Right.
Well, we do, but we don't have a big enough say. And then our taxes are whacked compared in terms of that equation.
Right.
I feel that was a bad decision somewhere along the line. So I'm just not there. I would need time and I would need to be able to go into the weeds. But the rest of the board may feel differently. I mean, we only need three, so.
What do you think, Sheila?
I think as long as we go with Eco Maine, it really, either one is fine with me. I have no problem with either.
I'm on the fence. I'm thinking about both things, whether we're gonna be a contract or an owner, and I haven't come to a conclusion yet. I'm not quite there.
But
I think Eco Maine is the way to go.
But it's safe to say that all 5 are with Eco Maine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Do we have another meeting? Can we make this, okay?
Yeah, you have another meeting in January.
But I said, but you have the time, we can, yes.
But we would have to make the decision then?
Yeah.
In 2 weeks?
Right.
Or whenever it is.
Sometimes when you don't make a decision, you've made a decision.
Well, I get that also.
So would people be interested in a tour? Going down, you meet the people, you get to talk to them in real life versus hearing it from us. And
Well, and just see the facility and see how it all works. Yeah,
Yep.
it's like the sewage treatment tour. It's great stuff.
And I would, if we get into the power plant, I'd be interested in seeing that. That's a piece I had not seen. But talking to the management is gonna be really the most important part. And then whatever tours we can take would be great. Good.
All right, I'll try to find some times.
Good.
Just try not to do it on a Tuesday or Wednesday, for me.
Or a Thursday.
Friday.
Or Monday.
Whatever you can figure out, I can.
Any more questions for Eric?
No.
No?
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Eric.
13, authorized sewer commitment.
Can I ask one question? Do we have to go to, if we buy in, do we have to go to a vote, Lori, to the town?
Yeah, I think you do.
Referendum.
I think you have to go to a town meeting vote.
And
That's
so-
what I told them.
So would it be
June?
special or would it be June?
That's up to the board. Kennebunk is doing a special in February because they need to budget, and so they want to do that. And we might need to, depending on Eco Maine's timeline, because we're gonna
Oh, you need it for May?
have to start in July, and doing it in the second week of June is probably a little tight timeline. But because we would do an interlocal agreement, that would need to be authorized by the town, and then to have such a long agreement, I think you need a town meeting authorization.
Okay, item 13, is that, you all set?
Yep.
Okay. Item 13, authorized sewer commitment for prorated properties.
So these are 3 accounts that came online after the sewer commitment. They were new construction, and so our new policy is that when they get a certificate of occupancy, that's when we start billing. So we were looking at a commitment of $733.46.
So moved.
Second,
Last year.
it was a little bit more.
Well, these are just the prorated for the individual homes.
Okay,
Yeah,
Because of the, yeah.
Right.
'Cause it went for the
so it's
whole
not
year.
700 for each
No.
user, it's for 3 bills.
Yeah.
You got it first and second.
That, I have a first and second. Any more discussion?
No.
No? All in favor? Yep. Okay. Item 14, committees and subcommittees work.
Yep, so, you want me to?
Sure.
Okay, so I took the action, I handed you guys all out,
Did you steal mine?
I stole yours.
You have yours?
Yeah. So I took the action at one of our last board meetings in December to draft a proposed process for an annual review of our Kennebunkport committees to the Board of Selectmen. So the proposal is an annual review of the various town committees to the board. The review will include a rehash of the mission and charter statements, just to reground all of us, current activities and issues and concerns that that specific committee has. So I'm proposing that they'll present the board an overview of the various, well, this will provide the board with an overview of the various committees' work efforts to ensure that we have a alignment with the town goals, maintain a manageable work queue within our town capabilities, opportunity to address any issues or concerns from the committee, address any overlaps between the committees that the Board of Select will see, and provide guidance for specific committee focus that we might want them to work on. This will help us align our limited resources in the town to best serve the needs of our residents. This will also serve as an additional avenue to help inform our residents of the various working groups within our community and opportunities for their participation. We'd want this review to happen in the first half of the calendar year. We'd ask the chair of the committees to come in and present to the board. We'd ask them to bring information about the mission charter, the meeting cadence, introduce us to the committee members, including any subcommittees that they may have, current work activities and planned work activities, any issues or barriers that they need the board's help with, or any other comments that they want to bring forward. So I would ask if you guys could give me some feedback, and then I would incorporate that as needed, and then bring this back for a final review at our next meeting.
I see this as a very responsible oversight that the board should have to each of the committees. It helps any committee to remind themselves what the charter is, and have an opportunity to share what their achievements and their goals are for that year. So
Yeah, I think,
I'm all
No.
in favor.
I think you're correct.
I agree, and I think it also gives it, both the board, as a new member, an educational ability to hear about these committees from them, as well as the committees to sort of market themselves to people who might be watching, to try and find people to join their committee.
It's a win-win, yep.
Yep.
And the idea is we just do maybe a couple each board meeting on the first.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have Lori work out the cadence as she saw fit, based on the committees, and then the budget committee, and other
Yeah.
things, so.
Some may be quicker than others, you
Yeah.
group them, so
Yeah.
but that'd be great, that'd be great.
No, it's a good idea.
It's an
Okay.
excellent idea.
Anything
Do you
else
want
on
this
that?
back?
No?
You're all set.
You can have it.
Okay, item 14, no, excuse me, item 15, accept the following donations. $50 from the Madonna Chapter 144 towards the Emergency Food Fund, $50 from Roger Seavey, and $200 from Maggie Waters towards the Emergency Fuel Fund, $500 from Ruth Fernandez towards the Emergency Food Fund, $814 from the KRA in memory of David James towards the General Needs Account, $3,200 from the South Congregational Church towards the General Needs Account.
That's marvelous,
Thank you, every one of you.
very much.
So
It is so, you're right, it's so generous.
I make a motion to accept those funds with gratitude.
Second?
The first and second, all in favor?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, 16, whoa, other business.
It's 10 of 9, I have no other business.
Mary Beth?
I'm going to save my other business until our next meeting, because Sheila's looking at me.
I will pass as well.
Pass.
Okay, I have none.
None for me.
None. Wow, we're
I was
back.
gonna say, Laura, you don't have any. We have a rule, don't we have a rule that you can't bring it up after 9 o'clock anyways?
I haven't got that far yet. Approve the January 9th, 2025
We
treasurer's
just
warrant.
adopted.
So
So,
move.
second.
All in favor? Okay. How about an adjournment?
Sheila.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Yay!
You made it by
Good night.
nine. Thank you.
Thanks for sticking around.